I can have everyone's attention, please. If you could take out your cell phone, handheld personal devices, mobile devices. We have to power them off. They can't be on vibrate, silent, or any other mode other than powered off. If you're speaking this evening, we ask please that you sign in. We also ask that you direct all comments, questions, and concerns to the board. If you're presenting any information, or whether it be diagrams, elevations, we ask that you please put them on the front table here so it could be recorded for our record. If you need to speak to one another, please take it in the hallway. It interferes with our opportunity to hear those that are speaking this evening. We're going to start this evening's meeting first with a motion to open. Is there a motion, please?
I make a motion that we open this meeting of the Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation on July 24th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to the July 24th, 2017 meeting of the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Preservation. My name is Curtis Highsmith, and I'm the chair. I'd like to introduce the panel of this evening. We have Brian Brady, Christina Redding, Susan Stevenson, as well as Jeff Broadleaf. We'd like to welcome our historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, our legal counsel, Bo Robinson, and Antoinette and Charlie. As always, we want to welcome you. We're going to start this evening's meeting with signs and first application signs, please.
First application is 11T USA, LLC.
Is the applicant present? Step forward. Your name for the record, please.
Mark Pedisano.
Okay. Okay, so this is just a decal on the window?
Yes, 2
Okay.
by 2.
Sorry?
It's 2 by 2.
2 by 2. Just one, not over any door, any doorway, any other?
No, just center of the window.
Just center on the window, okay. Board members, have you had the opportunity to review? Any questions,
I have no
issues?
issues with it.
I've seen it in C2, as they say.
Okay. Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the signed store window sign application for 11T USA LLC.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good luck.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
And that actually concludes our sign permits for this evening. First application, historic. There's a letter in the file to request an adjournment.
Adjournment till September 25th.
Okay. Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until September 20.
Curtis,
Sorry. Yes, sir.
you need to consider at this stage whether or not on September 25th this application will be so stale as to require
Reposting or emailing.
posting, mailing, and notification, which I would think it would be. I think
Okay.
it's, I don't know when, it's probably back in January?
It's even further back than
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Right. So it's
So
We
you're-
changed architects, so it should be a new
Yeah, so
application.
Yeah.
okay.
the application should be approved conditionally upon republication, notification, and mailing.
Agreed. If we can get out letter to the applicant, just giving an update that there's going to be a requirement prior to the next meeting that it be reposted.
5th.
There was a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application.
Next application is SH24, LLC, N28.
Thank you. So you're hearing these together as is in your past practice. Thank you. My name is John Bennett, and I represent 24 and 28 Gin Lane owners. At the last board meeting, Natasha Jarek from Tim Haynes' office presented the redesign, which was a significant redesign of the residences at 24 and 28. Richard Hayes, also from Tim's office, explained the historical influences behind the proposed design. And Ed Hollander discussed the landscape plan. Just a couple of things, high points in terms of what has gone on in the last 8 to 9 months since this application was submitted. We submitted a list of changes, numbering into the, I think there were 20 changes that have been made in the last 8 to 9 months. But probably as important as anything, despite the fact of our client's right to build an 18,000 square foot house, the house is now at 15,200 square feet. We have in a, what I can only tell you without fear of any intelligent contradiction, is a massive attempt at conciliation. We've moved this house back 80 feet. 80 feet because primarily the neighbors to the north request that the pool be in front of the house. you'll see from Ed Hollander's presentations of the streetscapes that we are now well behind these two houses flanking us on either side. One being the Mangers, who apparently have continued their opposition, the other being the house currently owned by Mr. August. Some people know it as the Camuto House. Vince Camuto owned it for many years. Who has not opposed the application. So well behind those houses. As I said at the last time I was here, I've spent a better part of my professional career on the East End clawing for 2 feet, 3 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet closer to the ocean for clients because it's such an important part of the value of an oceanfront house. We have an attempt to move this along and be unbelievably conciliatory, move the house back 80 feet. So that's a massive thing. We've also, as I'm sure everyone would agree, have significantly...
Excuse me one second. Sir?
There are chairs up here.
Oh, the chair's up here. All right, John, last meeting, we saw the reviews. There were, we asked that there be an adjournment for some time to review the changes and changes.
And also Brian asked, I think wisely, for renderings. We have those, which Tim is going to go through. There were some additional streetscapes that you want to see, and we submitted those, and Ed will take you through those. So I'll have Tim and then Ed come up and talk to you about the things that I've said they're going to talk to you about. But then what I would really like to hear this evening is your input.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. No. Tim, go, please. All right. No.
Ask the question as soon as he comes out.
I'd rather the renderings. Okay.
What you're presenting today is already in the file. It's been in the file.
Everything's been in the file.
Okay. It was
Thursday.
just Thursday. In the file on Thursday, correct? Thursday received.
Kelly, I need it turned around.
Got it.
Thank you.
Sure. And if there's any elevation that you want to see, you have them, but we have them on board. So just shout out what you want to see, and we'll bring it up for you. So they can see where
I don't know, can you just pick up both?
Charlie? Yeah. Charlie,
There you
that's
go.
great. Thanks, Charlie. Thank you very much.
Can you get both?
Thank you.
Hi, guys. Sorry if I'm going to repeat anything because I haven't been here more recently, and my office has been talking to you about the redesign. We have created a new house and changed the approach, the architecture, the orientation, and the basic massing and partie of the project. Ed may talk a little bit more about it, but in terms of the overall approach, we are now sort of sweeping through the property as opposed to running a straight line along the eastern border. We've repositioned the guest house and made it incommensurate with the design of the new main house, but I'll come back to that if need be. So as we sweep through the property now, we come, can you see this if it's vertical? I guess
We have it in front of us.
okay, all right.
So
So if you look at rendering 1,
No. It's this, is that correct?
yes. So the first one in the upper left is number 1. Right?
Page 3 of the packet, I think.
Yes.
You come first to a one-story carriage house that you drive through that immediately sets the sort of tone of a small, sort of charming approach. Through that now, as opposed to, we've oriented the house so that it is a main house that faces, its front facade faces the street, its back facade faces the ocean. It's no longer a a turn in axes as you come in. So as you drive through the sort of carriage house, straight on axes to you is the front door of the house, which you can sort of see more clearly in number 7, which is as you come into this asymmetrical, broken down masses of volumes. The main volume has a sweeping roof which comes down to the ground floor and creates a covered arcade around parts of the additions. The additions that have been added to the main house give the appearance of having tumbled out and built over time. So if you look in the second rendering, you can see the sort of, as the house turns, it steps down in its roof. We get a variety of gable ends and hips and dormers, so that we have a complete sort of more arts and crafts inspired shingle style house that incorporates brick, shingle, timbers, and oyster shell stucco. And probably from a more distant view, you can look at number 6, which gives you sort of that's the view from the back of the house, from the pool side, from the ocean side. Again, breaking down into the gable ends and in the oyster shell stucco and arcades that support the upper stories. In some of the other views, you're looking at number 3 is from the pool house, which has an open sort of loggia between 2 ends, and that looks out to the pool. Number 4 gives you a pool view. Number 5, again, that's looking through that open middle section of the pool house at the pool. The last one, number 8, is at the pool looking back at the ocean side of the house. So we've taken the house from a sort of more forced turned axes in a more Georgian revival house to a arts and crafts inspired English house that has its main characteristics of asymmetry, charming sort of roof lines and composition of different volumes to create a much more unassuming, casual beach house that is commensurate with a lot of the architecture that you find in both in the local area. We looked at English houses. We also looked at houses in East Hampton and in Southampton, and to get to this end result. We moved the house, as John has said, back from the ocean. We flipped the pool to the ocean side as had been requested of us, and that enabled us to move the house as far forward to the property line as the setbacks as we could. So I would say, from my point of view, the major redesign of this house has to do with its language of its architecture, its placement on the site, its approach to volume, massing, roof lines that were asked for us to bring down to the ground, and its asymmetrical aspects of charm, and the appearance of a house that sort of grew over time.
Ed, did you want to, unless you had any questions of Tim?
Any questions, Board of Tim?
Yeah, Tim, could you sort of talk to us a little bit about the placement of the house and how it relates to the neighbors on Fairleigh? Because it looks like you really tried to screen where screening was necessary and open it up where things were opened up.
Well,
that would be important.
yeah. One thing we wanted to do, we've pushed back so that the oceanfront lot, the Mangers, is completely clear of anything. We have a central volume and then we step the roofs down as we go all the way around, so that even the next neighbor has a much lower roof. No one's looking at now a facade that has turned itself to them. The house completely flipped its 90 degrees so that its main focus and its biggest volume is, we thought, putting it in the least obtrusive place, so that this, if one looks at, in terms of this house and also this house, we kept the low carriage house and dormered additions, the most modest sort of things that tumbled out over time, so that this neighbor would be the least impacted. The oceanfront lot is completely clear, and we kept all fenestration to its minimum. We took away a lot of the glass. We took all of the bays except for one away. We took the metal windows away and made it all wood windows. And there is nominal views and no focus towards any sort of power of axes towards the east-west direction. All force is from this drive, which has been taken away from all of the neighbors here. We now meander through the lot, we turn, and Ed will talk a little bit more about it, and you come here, and this house doesn't even loom in front of you because we've created this sort of one-story carriage house that you drive through, and these are all then the lowest sections of the house. And then this section has also been dropped into the 40s. And then the only ridge line that exists at its high point is this small section right there. And these roofs are major gables that swoop all the way down to the ground. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
That's good.
What are the roof heights in the step-down version? It's facing, well, not, I guess, the furthest part from the neighbor. So could you give us just an idea where the roof heights are? Section by section?
Yep. 52 at the main section. I do have a cheat sheet, sorry. No, she has it. I went through it with her. 52, 49.3, 45, 32, 42.
These are all above sea level.
Right.
Anyone outside, but some people don't, in the audience don't realize that.
Okay,
Right,
we want to
right.
explain that, so for those that don't understand.
Excuse me?
What do we
For
think
those
all
that
for
don't
sea
understand, you want to better explain
Well,
that.
in the village you take,
Well, you explain it for part of the record.
The grading is 15.
in the village you
Rule of
take,
thumb's 15.
in the village you take the height from the base flood plain plus 2 of freeboard. So the physical structure is no larger than it would be if it was on a farm field lot. It's just because of the federal emergency management agent's requirements, the house has to be elevated.
To a height of,
17 feet.
We're taking it from the existing grade, which is at 15 to 17.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah,
That's how we get the
that's what I'm
15.
trying to
get. Okay.
so you're starting at grade 17.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So it's not like it's not like you're on a farm field lot and you have a 52-foot high lot. It's far from that. And that's just what the law requires us to do. But what the village does is it also requires, in those zones, it requires you to comply with sky plane requirements so that there isn't light, and the neighboring properties don't lose light and shadow, and we're of course in compliance with that. It's the only area in the estate area, if you're in the flood zone, you have to meet the sky plane requirements. If you're not in the flood zone, in those zones, there's no pyramid law, but here there is. So because we're in the A zones, so that actually has driven a fair amount of the design because of the fact that we do have to comply with those sky plane requirements, both from the front and the side yards. And again, the whole purpose of that is to lessen any impact on the neighbors. Of course, we've done more than that. We've actually lowered the, in some areas, the height of the house lower than the maximum permissible. Again, to try to break down that, just step it down. But I wanted to make sure it's not like you're on a farm field and the house is 52 feet high.
Any other questions, board? Yes, I just want to see if there was any other questions what was presented so far. Christine?
From a standpoint of relativity, the existing house there, that was the McKnight's house, do you know the height of that above sea level?
Well, the carriage house there was quite high. I would say that was somewhere around 40-something feet high. But that's gone, or it's about to be gone.
It's there, isn't it?
Right.
It's going to be demolished
coming
probably sometime this week, pursuant to a demolition permit. I'm glad you talked about height of existing houses in the neighborhood.
I was just asking about that one.
No. But listen, but this is important.
But they're very tall.
No, stop. Listen, because no.
It's not worth.
Excuse me. I'd like to say it because what presumably what you want to know is the height of this house in relation to extant houses, because the McKnight house is going to be gone.
I didn't ask that question.
Okay.
You didn't want to tell me that.
Well, I think it's
fine.
important. The Michael Check house is 63 feet. You don't have to take above sea level. You don't have to take my word for that. We have a Squires and Holden survey. And the Manger house 61. And people say, oh, that's just the turret. Well, I have intimate knowledge with the turret, having been on the crew that shingled it. We shingled it in the 70s. It's a big turret. So that's 61 feet high above sea level. So the surrounding houses are much higher.
Anything further?
No, that's actually helpful.
Is there anything further in the presentation?
Oh, yes.
I think Ed's going to talk a little bit about
I will be
more
quick,
eloquently than I am.
because my guess is there are people that would like to talk as well as me.
I'm sure.
I'm just out on a limb on that one. I will be quick. I'll reiterate there was a request for some views from the street and the beach and adjoining areas. And so what we've done is taken the arrangement and the layout of the property that we have. We will be salvaging and saving all of the trees that are on the site right now because it's so difficult to get nice big trees like that established on these oceanfront lots. And we'll be adding significantly to them so that we want the property to be a discrete addition to the area that's here. I worked for Vince Commuto for years and for any number of the other homeowners up and down Gin Lane. And we want the property to feel like it's something that has been there. The views, it's with the scale of things, it's difficult to do these without having drawings that are the size of the painting behind you. But this is the view from down at the street, and basically what you're seeing is hedges and trees, which is similar to what you see along Gin Lane in general. The house, even the guest house is set back so far from the street that it's not visible at all from any parts of the street. You may be able to see it from the heirs property, but it's really invisible as you come in here. The view from Gin Lane, you can see as we come by Lake Agawam, there are glimpses of the shingle-style roof that start to become visible. That's the Commuto house in the background that we see over there. But it's a pretty discrete element that we see here. Across the pond, once again, we see, you know, the old Commuto house. I guess the new August house is much more visible, and there are discrete. You can see peaks of the shingle roof through the trees, but it's a pretty subtle intrusion into the.
Ed, could you please point out the houses on there? So particularly, where is the Mangus house on the lower drawing?
Well,
Just a minute. Let me do it for Mr. Brody. Okay.
Mr. Bennett will take it.
Okay.
On the lower drawing, John.
Right. The lower drawing, you see the Commuto house in the front. You don't see
That's Commuto. No, you should. I did see.
But there are additional views.
Can you put it?
I'm just looking at the additional because I did see Mango.
You can't see it on the so if you lay it down
I will
flat.
let me flip the page and we'll be able to see it there. Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I want to see it on that lower
Right.
drawing.
I think the reality is that this little piece right here that you start to see there, because of the angle, this is the proposed house here, and that is a little bit of the roof line of the Manger house, but it's also
Flip the page.
fairly discreet.
Flip the page.
Okay, I'm going to flip the
But
page.
I want to, okay, we'll come back to
Right.
that, because it has to do with the scaling of that drawing.
Right. So here you can see, and some of these were taken, we obviously couldn't go into some people's properties, but you can see from here is the Commuto tennis court, the Commuto house, the proposed buildings that we are
Right.
building here.
And the Mangus house on that
The
one?
Mangers house here, I think, I have to just look. I think that's, I don't know if we actually included the Manger house in here.
It's
but-
not on this drawing.
Right. You see it really more on this drawing here. And you can see it, I think, and you can see it from the streetscape, from the ocean, on the bottom one here, John.
Okay.
That, I think, is a little bit of the Manger house there.
So,
But we're trying to, it's not easy to put these things together to an accurate scale.
well, that is accuracy and our viewpoint.
It is, as I said, it's not easy, but we have done our best to, without,
So,
but you can see that,
and so again, John, where's the
This is
Mangus house?
Commuto.
Yes?
Yep.
That's Michael Check.
right,
That's Manger.
that's Manger back there, right, yeah.
So,
It does all show on here.
the issue, yes,
Yeah.
so the issue, and your house is in front,
Is in front, it is far north of the Manger house.
right, so, but in terms of east-west, it's west. So therefore, it's in front of the house, so it's closer to my view and to the camera. So the issue that I have with those drawings, and in as much as you said it's difficult to have accuracy, is that the Mangus house at 61 feet, which John offered up the size of the house, is further back, yet your house at 52 feet
Right.
shows up as considerably smaller.
Because it
And
is.
it's only difference,
Well, no, the Manger house doesn't loom very large here either. I mean, if you look at this house, that roof line compared to our roof line, a lot of our roof line is obscured by trees. As you can see from the plan over here, we have a lot more planting around our house than the Mangers do. The Manger house is really much more wide open, as you can see in the aerial photo. We were proposing to do, I think the issue here is that the proposed landscaping is obscuring the view of the proposed building more.
What I'm talking about is a matter of perspective and geometry. So that when you have a house that's a difference of 9 feet and it's 100 feet further to the distance, the height of that house from the naked eye, and I'm not an expert, but this is the way I viewed it when I looked at the property before I came over here when I took a picture, that you would expect both roof levels to appear on that drawing at least the same height. But yours looks so diminutive against, excuse me, John, I'm speaking
You're not being
to Ed.
specific.
I think the problem is if I took all the trees off of here, it would be exactly what you say.
So what I'm doing, and in as much as Ed said that there was an issue of accuracy, is I'm just concerned that the renderings as presented do not represent what would actually be seen by the eye post-construction. I know you've made a very good attempt.
I don't mean to
But
be
to this
impolite,
one-
but I think the reality is if I took the trees off of here, I think exactly what you're saying would be true. If we propose no landscaping and no planting, I think you would have a clearer view of the roof
All
line.
right, so maybe you'll do that the next time then.
I hope we don't have to come back another time, but if you'd like us to, we will, of course.
To what end, though?
Yeah.
To what end? I'd like to know what the,
To what
your
end
question
is
Let me
that
just show you these
I'm
last couple of views
questioning
and-
the scaling of those drawings. Ed has admitted that there's issue of accuracy, and I know he's made a darn good attempt, but as I drive by that view, and as I took a picture earlier today, that doesn't compute
Yeah,
with
that's all
this.
fine, but your question has to be related to an inquiry which would allow for an appropriate modification within your jurisdiction.
I think if I
Let
were
me
to
finish,
take-
because it's appropriate to, I don't know why,
Please
Please,
just
okay?
concentrate on.
Thank you, all right?
I just want to understand what your question is, what you're saying, and I want to
What I'm
make sure
saying-
that I think we're sidestepping some of the concern or issue. I will stand on the side of caution and play devil's advocate. You made a comment that there is some challenges by which
Absolutely.
to show
We can't go on to people's
Let me
properties
finish. Let me
to take
finish my
pictures.
let me finish my thought.
Yeah.
Some challenges on your part to really demonstrate from a rendering accuracy of height and dimension, especially specifically since you're including screening.
Right.
And because of that, it's kind of hindering you from showing the actual viewpoint as stated without screening.
Yes.
And what my board member is saying is that because you're saying that the accuracy seems to be in question, it kind of it makes it very challenging for us to figure out what the full impact would be.
Okay, and I understand that, and I respect that. And I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think what I'm trying to answer that and saying is that I understand what you're saying, but I think the reason why it feels that way is because of the amount of planting. We're trying to create not just a building in a piece of property, but we're trying to create a home set in a grove of landscaping that makes it feel like it has been here.
So rather than...
Let me get to my point, if I may.
Answer Ed's perspective. So it's an issue of perspective. So rather than questioning perspective and geometry and the like, since you volunteered to come back with the drawing sans trees, because otherwise I sit here and if you point out the top of the rooftop over those trees, which you did, and a house in front of it that's 9 feet difference and 100 feet closer, approximately or thereabouts,
Let me respond.
they should prospectively be about the same height in that rendering. So I'm questioning the rendering. I'm questioning what it'll look like at the end of the day.
I have to do this, okay? Because what I have to tell you is, as any tribunal is circumscribed in terms of their power, which means that your line of inquiry has to lead towards a question that you want answered that is within the ambit of your powers. Okay. You have to let me finish. This is my record, okay? All right? It is beyond any sort of cavil to argue that you have the right to lower these roof heights. You simply, Ms. Stevenson, you're shaking your head. It's not appreciated, okay? Let me finish. Let me finish, because I've been at this at 9 months.
Okay, but we need you to finish your statement. I understand. What I don't want, John, I know it's going to be a lot of distraction.
You're distracting. I love you. I respect you, but let me finish, please.
We're trying to get there, okay?
All right. So it has to be related to something within your jurisdiction. I have voluntarily lowered the roof heights. Your question has to relate to some sort of modification you can legally ask me to make. So what I'd like to ask you is, what is your inquiry? Do you want these roof heights lowered? Because we're not willing to offer that.
But can I just make one point? I just wanted, just because I'm the one who put a lot of...
If you may, let me respond to John. I wasn't talking about the roof height specifically. I was talking about the rendering that was presented. This board and any member of the board does have the right by code to request for information that it deems necessary in order to make a judgment. So you have presented material that I deem insufficient because it lacks the perspective that I think, and your own presenter said, it's difficult to do it with accuracy.
I'm going to hoist you on your own petard. You said necessary. You said necessary. It has to be legally necessary. You don't have the authority to require us to lower these roof heights.
I'll say this just to alleviate any misunderstanding or concerns. We do have a responsibility and a right to ask for visual impact with accuracy, and that's what we're asking for in these matters.
I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't parse my words to try and think of what I am. You know, I'm a landscape architect, and I care about what we do here, and I care about what this property looks like, and I care about what this village looks like. I'm not a lawyer that is trained to analyze every word I say. And if I happen to say something where the word happens to be the wrong word because I'm not a wordsmith, it's just a little unfair to say, well, you said it's difficult to be accurate. These kind of perspective drawings where you're trying to take a point from away and you're working with things like Google Earth and you're working with perspective. Can I tell you in all honesty that I can guarantee that the images we download from Google Earth are precisely accurate? I can't say that to you honestly. What I can say to you honestly as a professional and as someone who cares is that we have made every professional effort we can to present to this board and to present to this village as accurate a rendering of what we feel this is going to look like as we possibly can. Now, can someone at NASA do a better job than this? I'm sure they can. I'm sure they can get to the inch. But I tell you from the bottom of my heart that we have made every effort we can to make this as accurate we can and have no desire to try and pull any flim-flam. We're just trying to do the best we
I'm
can.
not
Right, and-
disputing that your attempt, I'm just disputing the result, and that there may be an
But I
alternative
think
method.
disputing the
just
result
wanna
is
add one
insulting.
thing
I
on-
think it's
We can
insulting.
proceed on.
I want to
No,
add one thing
what's
on
in-
architecturally,
Yeah.
just
It's not
because, like
insulting,
with
because I
Ed, I
wasn't
mean, we did go
questioning
back,
your
We
effort.
got multiple
Yeah.
conversations
Yeah.
going.
we also, like Ed, I care about, obviously, I got rid of an entire design and went back to ground zero, listening to what everyone wanted, and it was a valid approach, and so we put every effort in our heart into creating a house that was not a reworking. I can't give you a list of the changes we made. It's an entirely new house. Before, 95% of our house was within 2 feet of the maximum height. Now I would say 20 to 25% is at its maximum height. I just want to make that point, that our roof lines now go from 20 feet under max up to 10 feet under max, 7 feet under max, a little portion at 2 and 3 feet, and only about 40 feet of it, approximately. I don't want to get, again, like Ed, I'm not a lawyer either. Only one little section now is at the maximum height, when before 90% of it was at its maximum height. And we're really not here trying to flim-flam or try to sugarcoat an old design. This is a design that has broken down its complete orientation, its placement on the land, its massing, its complete language. Everything went out the window, and we're presenting something because we too, I love the village and I love what I do and I love creating these houses, and we have tried to literally reinvent, and we love the new house, and I think it would be everything, but this is a house that even at those heights, all of its roofs are swooping down and creating a completely different ambience from the old house.
I understand the frustration. This
Yeah.
has been a long, lengthy application
No,
process.
I just want to make that point,
I
that
get it.
I understand the height issue
But
and the volume
There
massing.
was only one question as it refers
Sure,
to your
sure.
rendering, and we got into a 20-minute, half-an-hour
Absolutely.
debate.
I know.
It's going to be a long night if
Right.
that's the
Yeah.
approach
Okay.
moving forward.
I'm
So
sorry.
if we can just
Yep.
calm down a little bit. We have a right to ask questions. We want a response. It doesn't have to be contentious. So we haven't even gotten to the audience or public
Yeah.
comment yet.
My apologies.
All right. Anything further, Susan?
Well, is there a view looking from the east to the west on your,
From the east, we didn't go onto the Manger property. Well, on the second,
they might have different page numbers.
we have, all we could do, and this may not, because we're actually elevated in this one. This is the view from almost east of the Mangers, across their house, their pool, looking at the house here.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you,
And then,
Mr.
and then
Hollander.
that's the view from the beach. I don't mean the beach, I'm just calling it, but, okay.
Christine, you have any comments?
No.
Comments? Zach, this is an historic district. I don't think we've had really an opportunity to really chime in terms of your viewpoint, creating the environment for the community, the various design changes that have been made. The applicant is now taking a lot from what our code has asked for us to, and that's the step-down version. Do you feel, in terms of the displays, to display the fact that the house may have grown over time organically? That's his position in his case. Is this something that you feel that has been successful, or do you think that there's something in terms of the overall environment of the application that needs a little bit more tweaking and review?
I just remember commenting that the earlier design felt uncomfortable on that lot because of the configuration of the lot, not because of the architecture of the house, but because of the long, narrow approach and the design of the house, in my estimation, historically, because we're emulating something historical here in the historic district, deserved kind of a wider approach. And I feel that this new design absolutely address that. Also, in terms of the approach kind of wending its way up through and to it, that's the experience of someone who has the opportunity to make that approach. But nevertheless, I feel that the final design is much more responsive to the reality of the site, which is a very difficult, I would say, must be, not an architect, must be a very difficult property to design for because of the nature of how very narrow it is. I also feel that by bringing it back from the beach, regardless of neighboring properties, which are of course valid and of considerable concern, but just for the design of this, it feels like a more comfortable design on the property. And abandoning a kind of a more formal Georgian approach to a more organic, as described, you know, it may have grown over time, and of course, but just the variation in the roof heights and the enclosing of that courtyard with a approach through, all that seems a much happier kind of approach to this site. And that was my only feeling from the start, was that there was nothing essentially wrong with the design. It just seemed to be the wrong house for that lot. And now I think we have kind of the right house from those viewpoints. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anything from any other board members?
I went board by board.
Sorry. Sorry, Chair.
So, is there any public comment on the application? Please step forward. You want to step here?
I guess you can leave it.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Jeff Bragman. Actually, I'm just here to introduce the next two people that I'd like to bring up. I know you want to hear from Michael Goldblum. He's a member of the New York City Landmarks Commission, and I know the board was interested in what he had to say. And after he speaks, with the board's consent, we'll bring Rick Stott up. I just wanted to make one quick comment, and that is that we also had some questions about the diagrams that you were concerned about, and I brought the statute with me today, and I just want to read it because I don't think you need to be a lawyer to understand what the board's powers are. It says that the board has the right to request any other information which the board deems necessary in order to determine the appropriateness of the proposed changes. It's very common sense. It means you do have the powers that your board members were talking about. So I don't want to belabor that, but I'd like to bring up Michael Goldblum first. Thank you.
Hi.
All right.
Those good? Can you see those?
If
Charlie,
Charlie
can
puts
you
them on
take
the camera. Okay.
Okay. Want me to rotate?
No,
No,
you're right there.
no,
Good.
that's good. He can do it with the
Okay.
camera.
Great, thank you. All right, my name is Michael Goldblum. Thank you for giving me the time to discuss the design for 28 Chin Lane. The village standards require that new construction must be compatible with its immediate surroundings, in this case, the homes on the block, and more closely on Fairley Road, a distinct place in its own right within the historic district. Village Code Section 65-5C, paragraph 1, states that the board shall consider the general design, character, and appropriateness of the new construction. This image just kind of sets for me the context. It allowed me to understand what the context was, both in a broad sense, the block, and in a narrower sense, the Fairley Road zone here. So I'll come back to this. The most general way to discuss a design is to start with typology. A typical house in Southampton, New York, is different than a typical house in Southampton, England. The typology there is an attached townhouse. Here, it's a freestanding house, surrounded on all sides by landscaping. The new design is a courtyard typology, inward-looking, formal, centered on a forecourt. Nowhere else on this block can one find this type of house, and I'll come back to this, why that's important. All the houses on this block are freestanding pavilions surrounded by landscaping. One of the inspirations that the architect referred to was a house called The Salutation by Lutyens. It too, interestingly, is very typical, a freestanding villa surrounded by landscaping. The gatehouse, which is the inspiration for the gatehouse for this design, is actually another freestanding structure at the entrance to that very large, very lovely property. This more urban typology is carried into the pool house. Only 19 feet from the main house and aligned with its most prominent gable, it feels like an extension of that volume. On the block, pool houses are usually removed from the main house and can be viewed as freestanding pavilions. This panel shows the block and the relationship of pool houses to main houses. And you see that, generally speaking, they're rather far away, and they're usually seen from the house across the pool. Here, it continues the gable, and it's pretty close to it, so it kind of almost melds with the overall volume of the house. The next section, 65-5C4, requires that the board weighs the visual compatibility with surrounding properties, including proportion, and the proportion and arrangement of windows and other openings. This house is very, very horizontal in proportion when viewed from east to west. The west wall, oops, sorry, wrong one. There we go. The west wall is 206 feet 2 inches long, and it does go to admirable lengths to modulate this length with insets, roofs, and other material variations. But the variety implied in the elevation all takes place within a depth of 69 inches at most, with some of the steps as little as 14 inches. If this design were built, I'm concerned that it could look from Gin Lane like a Wild West streetscape, very varied in profile and color, but very flat so that it feels flimsy. Windows. The guidelines note that historically between 15 and 25% of a wall's surface consisted of glass. The style, shape, and distribution of door and window openings in new construction should respect those of its neighbors. Equally important is the proportion of window openings to the overall facade of the building. Most of the facades in the new design meet this standard much more effectively than before, except on the south side, visible from the beach. Comparing with the Isaac Bell House, a shingle-style classic cited in Mr. Haynes' original letter to the board, to the current design, we can see several significant differences. A high proportion of glass wall to solid, tall vertical openings, with most of them being floor to ceiling, a window operation that in this facade, many of them don't look like, or several of them don't look like they're double hung, sash, which is the typical, and very large picture windows with oversized pieces of glass with no articulation. Porches are also very important to the district and to the style of the village. Usually these porches, as noted in the guidelines, are integrated within the volume of the house. The south facade has a very large open deck, which you can see here highlighted. It dominates the south facade. It's set over a relatively blank first floor wall. It's kind of a party deck kind of format, more associated for me with Fire Island than Southampton, clearly very visible from the beach. 65-5C2 requires that the board assess the, quote, scale of proposed alteration or new construction in relation to the property itself, surrounding properties, and the neighborhood. Here, I'm going to go back to that. Oops, sliding around there, sorry. Okay. So, historically appropriate architectural design is not the frilly wrapping paper taped onto a box of real estate. The Village Code requires that this board evaluate scale as a key component of any determination of appropriateness. Even if we don't address size, we must talk about scale. Scale is how a design apportions the available floor area over its site. We have all been surprised, I'm sure, at a small building that feels big or a large building that somehow feels more comfortable than its size would suggest. How big a building seems, what shape it is, where it is placed, other basic facts are as much a part of an architectural design and are as important to your determination of historical appropriateness as are the details and the patterns of the exterior skin. The village guidelines put it as their first principle, quote, "New construction should reflect the characteristic scale, massing, rhythm, proportions, and building traditions of its environments." It reiterates this again. The scale of the building is one of the most important features in determining whether it's compatible with the setting, et cetera, et cetera. So scale measures the relative size of houses to each other, not expressed as a ratio of lot size to house size, that's FAR, that's zoning, but as structure to structure, seen across the landscape. So instead of talking about floor area, the way I found helpful to quantify it is footprint. I suggest that the footprint of the house is a better guide to the relative scale, telling us about the way the houses use their floor area to create volumes. So on this site plan, we used public data to try to analyze the scale of the different houses by looking at footprint. The average footprint on the entire block is 4,189 square feet. Fairleigh has an average of 2,898 square feet. By this measure, the scale of the proposed design remains inappropriate. At 10,600 as its gross square footprint, this house is 153% larger than the block's average and 266% larger than the Fairleigh average. Now, the courtyard typology of the house exacerbates this scale problem. The design, even at its current size, could have been, in my opinion, more appropriate had its massing and proportion been more sensitively arranged on the site. To create the court here, the rooms are strung out along one side of a corridor, like charms on a bracelet, stretching the house into a ribbon, squeezing out the floor area thinly around a courtyard. More traditional shingle-style houses, Isaac Bell House here, and another one picked out from the shingle-style book by Vincent Scully is the William Lowe House. Both demonstrate a more traditional layout, rooms on both sides of a corridor, clustering into clumps that accommodate the program more efficiently and more compactly, reducing the length of corridors and making a house feel more homey, less institutional. And by making the house more compact, it would have lessened its visual impact, its scale. Another side benefit had the house been more condensed, and you can see that it's extended almost artificially by this skinny connector here. By condensing its scale, it would have necessitated a whole lot less fill. The property, according to Mr. Stott, who's been looking at this more closely and who may speak to it next, notes that there was a considerable amount of fill implied by the plans, although there was not clarity on that. Because the fill was created in order to raise the house to meet FEMA standards, the further north the house goes, the more the property slopes up, the less fill would be necessary, the less change to the property. The criteria set forth in the code and guidelines are all interconnected and interdependent. A massive, ungainly house with historically accurate windows and moldings can be just as inappropriate as a petite, flat-roofed steel and glass pavilion. Style, material, roofscape are equally related to scale, massing, and relationship to context. The Village Code's requirements are not a restriction on creative expression, they are an invitation to do better. To bring it into compliance with Village Code, we would suggest that the board direct that the house be redesigned to remedy these discordances. 1, reduce the house's scale by making the house more compact. 2, reduce the overall length of the house and improve the three-dimensional depth of the west facade, which would be visible from Gin Lane. 3, look more carefully at the stylistic elements of the south facade. And 4, move the pool house away from the main house so it had a relationship closer to those on the block. Thank you for giving me this time.
Thank you.
Can I just, when Michael has one of his exhibits up there, I want to point something out to the board.
Well, yes, another person to speak, and then
Very good.
rebuttal if he wants to share his.
He's got to bring them back for me. Thank you.
Is there another public speaker?
I'm Rick Stott, local architect on Main Street. I've been hired by the Mangers and the Michael Checks to help them interpret the drawings, understand what they mean, look at them in terms of the village's zoning, and also to be sure that I, as a design professional, are held to the same standards as all the other ones who promote and propose projects in Southampton Village. I have some handouts. Now, I don't have large boards. This presentation is quite small, so I can put these up.
Do you have any copies for us to look at?
I don't. I just
We always give copies to
I'm sorry, I've never gotten a copy
Please
from you
speak
of
to the
anything.
board, please. Don't
Don't talk to him. Thank you.
I haven't, John. You presented these things. I haven't
You
received
want to
it.
address what's in your
Okay.
pamphlet, please?
So there's one thing about this project that I've been most
This will be
curious.
part of the file. If there's any questions.
I would
and
like to
comments.
look at it as he presents it.
I only have what I brought. Something's puzzled me from the beginning of this application, and looking into the submissions, it seems like it's something that was permitted before this application was even brought forth to the village, and that is the retaining wall or berm or whatever it is, that 400-foot thing on the west edge of the property.
There's a permit for it.
There is a permit for it, which was applied for and granted before there was any certificate of appropriateness. In fact, the permit is dated before the document that requests the certificate of appropriateness was even provided for the village. So that kind of confuses me. Secondly, I don't know what it is. Is it a berm? Is it a retaining wall? Is it both? And if it's one or the other, maybe we can get an answer to that. If it's one or the other, then what is its purpose? We asked the question back in maybe January, February, that same question, and John Bennett's answer was, oh, well, that retaining wall is required for the Suffolk County Health Department permit. But there is no Suffolk County Health Department permit, and it's 400 feet long. If it was really required for that purpose, I question whether that really makes sense or not.
There is a health department permit, it's in the file.
Okay, I couldn't find it.
Look again.
I asked. They couldn't find it either.
If he's going to make misrepresentations,
But there'll be,
correct him immediately.
John, you know as well as anyone else, and you present before this
And I'll
before.
reply, John.
You'll
I went
have
to the
time
building
to
department
rebut,
and asked.
you'll have time to answer one another, but please do it in an open forum. They can't catch your comments on part of record.
Sure.
And give the respect of the person who's speaking before, just to have that time so we can hear him and we can also present our questions.
So my understanding that a berm and a wall have different restrictions. A berm, for example, requires planning board review. A retaining wall doesn't. A berm is allowed to have a retaining wall on the side of it. But does that negate the fact that it's a berm? I don't see that, because the other side of it has to do one of two things. It either has to retain soil or it has to slope away at that 3-to-1 pitch that's required. So I'm confused about what this thing is. If it's a berm, it should have been reviewed by the planning board and maybe others.
Is this a question?
Rick, excuse me. I appreciate the issues you've got, but these are issues not in front of this board. If you question these or there's some degree of confusion or misunderstanding, the appropriate forum is the building inspector.
Okay. I just wanted to
I'm
bring...
just trying to be efficient here for everybody, but this board doesn't have the jurisdiction, and I just don't think it's an appropriate line of commentary to them if they don't have the jurisdiction.
Okay. So we'll pursue this back at the building department. I should mention that there's a 6-foot-high fence on top of the 4-foot-high wall, which makes it a 10-foot-high fence wall berm. Other considerations. The applicant claims that the retaining wall will not have fill to its top, and I think this is in your jurisdiction. That means the retaining wall is not retaining anything. So if it's not retaining anything, then it's a berm.
Okay, but it goes back to what council was stating.
Okay.
Requested.
But there's no clarity on what this is.
I would, and so that you, I know, I understand you have questions about berm, whether, definition of whether it's a berm or a retaining wall. All matters such as that have to go before the building department. They're the enforcery department to determine whether something requires a different department or a different board to be reviewed.
Okay.
We're just looking at architecture, so if you have landscape-specific questions or elevation or even design, that's something that we can discuss this evening.
This does sort of get into the landscape thing that I'll get to in a few moments.
Okay.
The aerial photography that we've seen shows that there's a 6-foot-high fence also that has been constructed without a permit, evidently. This is something within your jurisdiction. There's a sign on the site that says KEM Site Development. There's no permit posted, but KEM Development isn't the contractor who made the application for either the fence, which isn't there, or the wall, or the berm. So it's a curious side.
That's the demo guy.
Okay. So, is there a permit for that sign? I don't think so.
Yes.
Oh. Okay. So, the drawings from the landscape architect in Mr. Haynes' office show the garage and the attachment in different locations, different sizes and different orientations. This is on the second page of my submission. The one on the left shows the attached garage without that long link. And the one that the landscape architect has rendered so nicely shows quite a long link. I think it's 24 feet of attachment between the garage and the house. You see the difference between those two?
Again, I can't see it. I hope that's fair, because I'm going to have the ask to respond.
Let me put it down here.
That'd be nice.
And see if you can zoom in on. Bottom left and bottom right. One is the shows the garage with the drive-through into the courtyard, and it's butt right up against the the northwest corner of the house. And in this iteration, there's a long link between there and the corner. So I'm confused as to which one is the one that's intended. I'd request an adjournment on this discrepancy alone. I've been made to come back and make clarification because there's that's fairly major discrepancy between two sets of drawings. I don't know which one's the intent.
Can you reference the drawings? I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to interrupt. Can you reference where you got that?
Here is one. Here is the one with the long link. This one, I would have to go back and look at the sheet number because I only took a snapshot.
Okay, just as a matter of reference.
But it's the one that was issued on Thursday along with the others.
Okay, so the photos that are being displayed here in your pamphlet are photos from information that's currently in the file.
Correct.
Based on the most recent renderings.
Here's from Thursday's application showing that from the architectural plan.
Is that correct, sir? Most recent renderings.
Yes, sir. It is.
No.
And they're displayed.
He's looking at an old drawing. There's the Thursday.
There's the one.
It was in the package. I can run up to my office and get it.
Can we please. The question I have is the information and the photos that you have here in the pamphlet are from the most recent renderings that the applicant most recently presented. And are they reflected in what's being showed right now by the applicant on the page?
All of that information, that discrepancy in the floor plan that I'm showing you came from drawings that were provided to us last Thursday. One was included in the package of drawings of both 24 and 28. The other was a separate drawing provided evidently by the landscape architect that was not part of the package.
Okay, thank you. The applicant can address that. Do you have any other questions or comments?
I do.
Okay.
In Article 62, don't want to get into an argument about who's really supposed to review this. I'll skip A and E. And F says, a description of the extent to which any water course will be altered. I only put that in there as a reminder that this is not a water course that we're altering, but by creating this retaining wall, we are, and evidently the proposed fill behind it, whether it's really there or not, we're really changing the character of this floodplain. If it's a tidal flood that affects it, it would drain differently than it does now. Okay. If it's a flood from rain,
we're still referring.
It would drain differently.
You're still referring to something that's not within our jurisdiction to discuss. We do not have any powers to affect that for the applicant. So I'm sorry.
Let's see what else here that applies to you guys.
Is there anything specific to the architecture, to the landscape plan itself? Trees are not being removed, the applicant is mentioning, but added to. Is there something specific with regards to any screening issues that you would like to address? Roof line, site, impact?
Yes, I would like to, there's an image on about halfway through. Let me put it down here. That shows an east-west site section through it.
Charlie, can you
zoom in on that?
It's set down kind of, sort of.
In the wrong place?
No, I don't know if you have the ability, Charlie, to zoom in. Okay.
That's it.
Is that it?
Okay, good. Just
You make it yours.
sorry, guys.
Okay, why don't you lay it flat and let Charlie make the changes?
I want to look at this area.
Widen
here.
a little bit more, Charlie. There you go. All right.
So in developing this courtyard effect building, which was a major change, it appears to me that the building moved farther to the west. I didn't honestly compare them house for house, but there's now a very, very long, almost 200-foot section of that wall that's right up against the west side of the property line, where this thing I'm not allowed to talk about exists. So the point I wanted to make is that thing I'm not allowed to talk about, the distance between that and the house seems very small. So providing this land, providing all the landscape that
you'll have a chance to rebut any information is being presented. You will have a chance to rebut any information is given.
Like it might be in a very narrow space. Okay. Maybe not possible for.
What number is it? Was that? I'm trying to. I want to be able to respond. I want to be able to respond. So what number is it? It's not the current.
I'll get you this copy of this.
I want to respond tonight.
Please,
thank you.
please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is not the current application.
Okay, you'll have time to rebut that. You want to... Anything further?
So, yes. So there's been some discussion about the perspectives. And I totally agree. It's very difficult to make perspectives accurate and true to the way they look. But it's certainly not impossible. I want to offer a comparison of two sets of these images. The way I did this, well, I'm going to read this through so I don't forget anything. After reviewing the images presented on 1/2017 just a few days ago, it appears that the representations made by the renderings presented do not reflect the real proportion, size, and placements of the buildings. I offer for comparison two sets of examples. The first is the view looking west from an elevated perspective to the east of the Menger main house. I do not know how the Haynes office produced these images. If it was, maybe it was the landscape architect. But it's vastly different than the image created from the 3D scale model that I produce using SketchUp, a program that was once owned by Google Earth for the purpose of gaining more 3D comparative models. Trimble Navigation now owns the program but all the principles are the same. These images are scalable for accuracy. Note in the first aerial view that the Manger Pool, its orientation to the beach, the proposed building, and the Manger House. And you can look at that image on that page where I'm reading from. This image and others include both the landscape architect's own site plan and the Google Earth terrain view, which I overlaid, so I know that both Google Earth and the landscape architect's presentation is accurate. They line up. All the houses on Fairleigh line up exactly with where Google Earth says they are. So with that in mind, if you turn the page, the top view is an image created, again, from both SketchUp and Google Earth that shows the same perspective as the one presented today by the landscape architect. So you can see clearly the eastern facade of the Manger House and its relationship evidently to where the proposed house is. But as I model and place the proposed house on the site plan and then rotate it to this elevation, the proposed house in this image is much farther north in appearance than the one they presented, and it's also up much higher. It's much larger in scale and comes up, and the two are obviously much different images. In the second set, and I haven't had time just in the past few days to go over every one of these images, but the second one is looking in the opposite direction from just above eye level. It's hard to tell exactly where it's from, but it's first of all impossible to be above Lake Agawam in the middle of the lake. So the next comparison set looks at a view provided by the Haynes office from slightly elevated view from the north side of the bathing corporation looking east toward the proposed project. The first image is of the proposed home with a great deal of vegetation screening the building. My SketchUp Girth image shows the Manger House, the roof of the proposed, and the Michelchek house in true scale and proportion. The Haynes rendering diminishes the scale and proportion of those structures as well as the proposed structure and hides them all behind the proposed trees and vegetation. The last page of what I'm presenting shows some views from closer up. The first one is from the Manger House south entry deck. I made this image because I think it's important for this board to understand how big this house really is with respect to its neighbors, that it's not just small, and the roof lines that do now sweep to the first floor don't make a really big impact over what was proposed earlier, or a really big change. The second one is from the Manger House driveway, just right smack in the middle of the driveway. That's the massing that you would see. Of course, it's not a rendering, so it's rendered in red. It's a mass. And the third one is from the Michelchek second floor, looking out of their second floor window.
He stands at the table and puts it on the table.
I will right now.
Okay, anything further? Thank you, sir.
You don't have to stand at the microphone either.
Okay.
It's too late now.
Anything further? No. Thank you.
Jeff Bragman for the opposing neighbors. I just want to make a couple of quick comments here about the structure that shall not be named, the 450-foot long wall that's on the property. I just want to read to you section 65-4, which says certificate of appropriateness required. And what it says is that no person shall carry out any moving of land, trees, or plantings upon a property within a historic district, nor shall any person make any material change in the appearance of such a property to the extent that it's visible from a public street, other rights of way, without first obtaining a certificate of appropriateness from the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation. You've got an applicant that has created a 450-foot-long wall on this property. And to my reading of the ordinary plain language of this statute, that would be moving land, trees, or plantings, and it's a designated property. It is visible from a public street and other rights-of-way. And therefore, it is a matter that is relevant to your review of this. And I also want to read to you Section 65-5, which is the criteria for approving a certificate of appropriateness. And B1 says that any alteration of an existing feature or property shall be compatible with its historic character as well as with the character of nearby properties. And I think the reason that we're concerned is we don't know of another case, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, in the historic district or particularly on Fairleigh, where you've allowed the creation of a 450-foot-long wall without any explanation of what its purpose is. And I remember back in January when we talked about this, the board itself was asking this applicant for an explanation of what was going on. And the same two people who are here today stood up and, told you earnestly that that wall was needed for a septic system. That appears to be inaccurate. And, when you're looking at the heart of the historic district of the village of Southampton, the very first area that was ever conceived to be a summer colony, and you have a property on which somebody has created a 450-foot-long wall, and you don't know why it's there or what it's doing, and it violates the plain language of the statute, for the life of me, I can't figure out how you can be counseled that this is outside your consideration. This is a dramatic alteration of a feature, and it's a dramatic alteration of this historic property. And if the board doesn't know it, the people, the residents of the village of Southampton know how important this lot is, and this area is. This was the very first area. So I would ask you as earnestly as I know how, find out what's going on with this wall and why they have a 450-foot wall. We've been asking since January for a grading plan and an excavation plan. We want to know whether they're putting fill in. Every time we get to this issue, it becomes obscured. FEMA doesn't require, and I just want to make one other comment, and then I will sit down. FEMA does not require filling a historic property, particularly one of the oldest historic properties in the village. It doesn't require it. It just requires elevating the house. And one of the wonderful things about shingle-style architecture, and I know I'm not lecturing Brian Brady on this, I'm not trying to lecture anybody, is that the houses had a way of elevating themselves up. And oftentimes you'd see lattice work that they would use to conceal that the house was elevated up. You don't need to elevate a property to comply with FEMA on this property, and there is no reason for a 450-foot-long wall, nor is there any reason for extensive fill on this property, nor is there any reason or criterion that would permit you to make this kind of dramatic change to this very, very historic property. You shouldn't do it, and you should not be sitting back and saying, oh, we can't do anything about it, we can't ask about it, we can't talk about it. We've already been talking about it since January, and you know what? We've never gotten an answer. And that's another thing I'd like.
You've asked this board, did you ask the building department?
We have asked the building department, we went to the building department back in January when these applicants, these same two individuals, stood up and told you it was for a septic system, and we said, let's see the septic plan. No septic plan. And we asked to see a health department approval. We did not see any health department approval. A 450-foot long wall is not a septic system wall. And why should you be permitting this kind of dramatic change on this property without even inquiring or getting a written plan from them? Let's get an elevation of this property showing what that building is going to look like going from south to north so that you can see how the terrain goes up. Because I've looked at it flat on a survey. That's what happens. The terrain rises as you go away from the water, which means you have to elevate it less. There's no reason for this wall. There's no reason to add fill to this site. We need answers. And for the applicant to say, well, we've been doing this for 9 months, it's, you know, or implying it's time to wrap it up, let's know. We don't want to guess anymore at this. So that's another, not only do we find these comparative drawings inaccurate, unscaled, and misleading, but to date, we have never answered this fundamental question. We've never gotten an answer. Let's get an answer, and not a verbal answer from the attorney tonight. Let's get it on paper, scalable, so that we can read it. That's my request.
Can I respond?
I know you're a fire keg and you want to respond to it. There's other, see if there's any, let's see if there's any other public comment, and then we'll go to rebuttal. So we're not going back and forth. Is there any other public comment from anyone else? No other public. I see someone's hand up. Please move forward.
Good evening. My name is Joyce Jafra, and my husband and I, Bob Jafra, are owners of 452 First Neck on the west side of Lake Mocomonto. And I just wanted to express strong reservations and concerns about this proposal. I think this is the third major project within the past year or so that's been proposed in this very historic Gin Lane, Meadow Lane, Lake Agawam area. And we're very concerned about preserving the historic nature of the village, the architectural beauty of this original summer colony. We're personally also in a similar situation to the Mangers, that we're fighting for the preservation of our neighbor's house, Mocomonto. And I just want the board to take a long time to think about preserving the architectural beauty and the historic nature of the village, not only for now, but also for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Might I say something about this issue about the burn and so on? Because the code, if I may, the code does provide for, in 65-9, for issues of enforcement. And it is under the realm of the building inspector to inspect periodically such work to assure compliance. It also provides for the Board of Architectural Review to be in a position to notify the building inspector. Therefore, given the concern, I would move, and I'd look for a second, to notify the building inspector of this issue.
I second the motion.
I'd like discussion.
There hasn't been a response from the applicant yet as to the...
Well, I believe I can make a motion to that.
No, I'd like legal discussion on it because it would be a legally infirm motion. I'll explain why.
But I second the motion.
Okay, there's been a motion, it's been seconded. Is there legal advice from the...
If there's a second, then there should be a vote.
What?
Robert's Rules of Order.
You know, it's really sad that we have to get into this kind of issues at a meeting like this. I think that you can have your vote or you cannot have it. What do you like? You've had a motion and a second.
And it's simply just to notify the building inspector that there's an issue of concern for him to take a look at it. That's all.
I have the right to be heard on it.
Should be a discussion, but you've had a motion and a second, so.
Okay. Any further discussion of the board? It's been a motion, it's been seconded. Any discussion?
I want to hear more information. I want to hear a rebuttal. I think that
I can.
Any more discusussion?
I'd like to hear.
Okay. So as the person, Robert's Rules of Order, as the person who made the motion, I can withdraw the motion temporarily until such a later time at the meeting. So I will do that in deference to you, John.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm very happy that Mr. Bragman admitted that he had been aware of the situation since January. This does have a building permit. First of all, before I forget, Phil is totally outside of your jurisdiction. But in any event, this does have a building permit. Mr. Bragman said he was aware of it since January under Section 7-712 of New York State Village Law. He had, and should have, if he had a concern about it, 60 days to bring the matter. It's a determination of an administrative official, i.e. the building inspector. He had 60 days to bring it to the Zoning Board of Appeals if he had an issue about it. It's not even case law, it is the law of the state of New York. If a person has a problem with any order or decision or permit of an administrator, a building administrator under 7-712 forgive me, I don't know the specific code section. I couldn't look it up because I had to shut my smartphone off, but I'll be more than happy to provide Mr. Robinson with the specific section. If you have a problem with the building permit that's an issue, you, a person, indeed this board, because this board has challenged decisions of the building inspector. This board has done it in the past. You have 60 days from the date of the issuance. Now, there is some gloss on that says, well, you know, if it's 60 days from the date of the issuance, but the person wasn't reasonably aware of it because it was sitting in a building file, we'll give some extra time.
What's the purpose of the wall?
Let me say one thing, because I think this is more important. We conferred with both neighbors, the Augusts and the heirs, and in conjunction with them, planted this hedge and fence. This was with neighbors getting together to do this. We moved a driveway. We did things. We talked to our neighbors, both the heirs who have the property on Gin Lane and the Augusts who have the old Commuto house. And all three of us working together agreed that we wanted a hedge separating the properties and separating the driveways. It was done with all the neighbors who are impacted doing it together. I mean,
excuse me. Are you now, okay, so that I understand, because there's been now a prior comment, it was mentioned that it was for septic purposes.
A portion of that wall is...
Now the comment is that a portion of it has been bermed to create hedging or screening.
There's no berm. The berm thing, there is a retaining wall that was built.
Okay.
There was hedging put in front of the wall.
So there's a retaining wall.
There's a retaining wall.
So there's the one question.
There is a retaining wall.
Retaining wall. So
there is a hedge on both sides of the retaining wall because the...
Excuse this, and you have the opportunity to rebut.
There is a hedge on both sides of the retaining wall. There's one on the top side, there's one in front of the wall. I planted that. Okay. The landscape contractors planted that because the August requested... Can you
show us, do you have a site plan? You can show us where this is. There's no ambiguity?
Right along here, there's this green line that you see here.
Okay. What, excuse me, if you can...
This green line starting down here, running up along here, there are two beautiful old Taxus densiformis yew bushes that are here that are 50 feet tall. We left them. We went around there. The wall then, where the septic system was proposed, was in this area. Now, the house has changed due to the request of everybody here, so the septic system would change, but the septic design was placed over here. There is, and you can see here, the double hedge on this plan. Hedge on the lower side facing the August property, wall down the middle, hedge on the upper side to give neighbors screening. We did this with this, talking to Glenn and Debbie August, talking to Charlie Ayers, talking with our clients, and everybody working together to do this for their mutual benefit.
With a building permit.
So the retaining wall was created for screening?
The retaining wall was created. We were required to do it for the septic plans that we had for the house that had been proposed at that time.
Which section involves the septic?
In this area here.
Where the house is.
Where the house is, right, yeah.
Okay. And is that the area of question?
But we did this with the neighbors.
I want to make sure that we visually understand where the concern is with regards to, now it's not a berm, it is a retaining wall. The retaining wall, the portion that's closest to the house for purposes of septic, that's what was created, and then there was screening added to
both
that.
In front and on top of.
On top.
Right.
Okay. The other thing, and then before I ask Ed to come up and talk about some of the visuals, the one thing I do want to, I was very concerned, this happens sometimes in meetings. I submit plans, sometimes people look at different plans. This is the plan, this is the house in Rick's drawing. It's a wider iteration of the house, and as you can see, it doesn't have this massing on this side. This is the current plan. It's not the same. Okay. Ed, do you want to talk about
the last thing that Mr. Stott showed, which hopefully addresses your concern, and I will defer to Mr.
The question about the berm, retaining wall, has that been answered to your
And
satisfaction?
my position would be, any motion would be legally infirm, because it's past the time.
Well, a board member made a motion for an issue, a concern, he wanted clarification. My question to my board member right now is, has that been answered to your satisfaction?
I'm going to be
No.
infirm.
The answer is no, but the resolution may not be as formal as I presented it. There is no time restriction in the code as written. Whether New York State's law supersedes that, which is the village code, I don't know. I'm not going to argue it here. John, that's fine. It's not a point of discussion here. What I would like to do in a cooperative nature to preserve the integrity of the board and the code is to review with the building inspector directly how and why this was issued. If it's a concern, then we'll address it at the next meeting. It doesn't have to be as formal as sending it back to John. I'll have a conversation with him, and if there's anything further, we can deal with it at that point. Is that satisfactory?
Could I ask, how much of that wall is for the septic? Because you're just, that's how we got into this in the first place, as far as I can tell. I would like to avoid confusion, Mr. Hollister.
And desiring to be accurate, I'm going to say that I can't tell you to the foot exactly how much it is.
No, relative to the 400 feet.
But I want to be accurate. And I'd have to refer to the Squires and Holden drawings. The Squires and Holden did the septic plan.
But now it's being moved, correct?
Well, as the board has requested architectural changes, it may impact the final location of the septic system, but the septic system undoubtedly is still going to occur in that general area.
And there is a buildup. Was there fill put in?
There, because of the way...
We asked that one time, and I don't think we have had clear answers. I would love to know what's going on.
If you refer to the Squires and Holden plans that show the septic system, it shows the grades that are required, because you have to have the bottom of the septic system a certain distance above seasonal high groundwater.
Right.
And so that's what determined, the grades that were determined there and the height of the wall were determined by the requirements of the septic system, yes.
So I'm asking you, out of the 400 horizontal feet, approximately, how much of that was required for septic?
We're looking like two-thirds.
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds? Okay, thank you.
Not that this board has any jurisdiction on septic. However, there were questions with regards to the retaining wall.
But I do want to say again.
Hold on. Now, since there's a change in adjustment of the house, does the height of that retaining wall or berm or any other type of elevation, is that impacted in any manner at all?
I don't think so, because the groundwater level and the height of the septic system isn't going to change.
Okay,
so that's going to this isn't going to change. This may change. But that wall we discussed it with the immediate neighbors, the Augusts that drive by it every day.
Got it. We're
trying to be good neighbors.
We're having an open dialogue now.
All right, okay. The last issue.
Because when you shift it back, as we did the 80 feet, it will require then the other third that wasn't required.
Mr. Stott, I'm going to put it down here.
No, that was important. Say that one more time, please.
Well, if you look, the wall is from here to here, and the septic was from there to there. But now we've moved the house back 80 feet, which probably would have been about that piece. So this septic will probably move back. So in sense, the part that wasn't needed for the septic before will now be needed because we've moved the house back 80 feet.
But the impact remains the same.
Right.
Yeah.
We didn't want the ground to just fall off. It had to be. I mean, this is inherent.
Is there a retaining wall on the other side, on the Manger side?
No. There's nothing on the Manger side. I thought Mr. Stott showed more clearly in his rendering, the relationship between the houses that are there. And so this shows, and maybe it's more accurate, but I think you can see the scale of how this would look that Mr. Stott produced, how the roof line of this house is actually lower than the adjoining houses in the rendering done by Mr. Stott.
Right.
Michael, check this house.
Right.
Manger.
Right.
I keep on saying Camuto, I'm sorry, but it's
I know
now
that
August.
Okay, good. I mean, it presents other issues, but let's hear from the public as
And
well.
all of that red is shingle.
Right.
Any other public comment, any other response, any rebuttal from the neighbor? If you could step forward, so it's part of the public record, please. Oh, you okay?
Sitting too long.
Oh, it's down. We all have them.
I just want to
Your name
remind...
for the record,
Oh, Lynn Manger, number 10, Fairleigh. I just want to remind something that I read back in, it was at the January meeting, where I said the page 61 also states to avoid removing or radically altering the site features, which this is altering the featured lawn of this property. And I realize that perhaps Mr. August and Mr. Ayers have gone along with this, but when it was being built, Mr. August called my son and wanted to know what was going on. There was no notice to anybody, and although he's referring to the neighbors on the west, the neighbors on the east can also see this. And we are the side that sees the wall with the hedge on the top, not the side that sees the hedge. And the hedge will only have leaves for about 4 months of the year. So the rest of the time, we're actually going to be looking at this concrete wall. So I realize that there must be some reason why they felt this was necessary as opposed to simply putting a hedge up, which is what was there before. But my concern at that time, and I apologize because I cannot find it now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it, but I did ask to have an environmental study done to show the effects of this concrete wall should you have a water surge or heavy rain, because the water coming up now will hit this wall from the ocean and will go to the east and the west, which is the neighbors on the east and the west. So I'm still greatly concerned as to why, if they wanted to put something to divide the property, they didn't leave the privet hedge that was there before or put a new privet hedge or whatever, but there must be some reason why they felt it necessary to put this concrete wall that I can see from my side.
What was discussed this evening is that a portion of that had to be
Yes,
elevated.
I would also like to look at the health department and see actually how much is needed for the septic system. Okay. Because I
and that's what I was going
question
to
that
mention,
as well.
that it was purposes for as a result to septic concern.
Right, but I would question how much is actually needed. And I would like the health department septic system thing to show me. I don't really want any response from these people.
Understood.
Well, I apologize, but I'll respond quickly. Just so the board understands, the retaining wall faces west, not east. There is no face of the retaining wall that's visible from the east. From the Manger side, we transplanted the existing hedge that was there. We saved all the hedge, we dug it, and we moved it. There's a 10-foot tall hedge. There's then another lower hedge in front of that. And then you see the only thing that's visible from this side is the bluestone coping that's on top of the wall. The face of the wall that goes from ground level up is visible only from the west side.
What material is that wall?
The wall is stucco face concrete with a gray-green New York State bluestone coping on top of it. I mean, our client was actually concerned enough that he wanted to make sure that the coping on top of the wall, which I said, you're crazy, because no one will ever see it.
And tell people this is after it's backfilled to provide for the site.
Okay, but I just want to clarify that the face of the wall is this side, and we transplanted the 10-foot hedge to save that. That's on top of the wall. There's then a new 6-foot high hedge in front of the wall as well.
They will not be staring at a wall.
Maybe necessarily it will be backfilled for the septic.
Okay, sorry.
It's not backfilled yet, that's the problem.
Exactly, okay, exactly, thank you. I just wanted to make, and I think Ed was talking after the construction of the house.
We are, because I don't want to press it to be set, but we are allowing this application to be a little more lax in terms of their reaction back and forth and the response, just because it is a very important application, and we want to make sure that we have a thorough review.
Jeff Bragman for the neighbors in opposition. I think there is a question about the wall that is subject for an interpretation by the building department, and that is whether or not what they've done is they've created a 4-foot retaining wall, and then they put a 6-foot fence on top of it, so that the total height of that fence is 10 feet, which exceeds your height limitation for a fence in a side yard without getting ARB approval. And I think it's a valid question to ask whether that constitutes a 10-foot tall fence that needed ARB approval. So that, I think, is a legal question that remains about this wall design. And the second thing is, I also would like to see an engineered septic plan, not offhand comments about, oh, how much of the wall they think is going to be necessary to build this septic system, but an engineered plan. And I still maintain that this board should and has an obligation to ask for and examine a grading plan so that we, again, know on a scalable plan that's submitted by someone qualified to give it to you with a scale and the materials, so that we know what kind of grading they plan to do. This is an awfully long wall, and it's a pretty massive structure to just be hanging out there. We want to know to what extent they're going to change the terrain of this ground. And if it requires them to show us an engineered septic plan, so be it. Let's get it. And I think the other point that we've made tonight, and I think the board has some of the same concerns we do, and I noticed when the consultants, pointed to the two roof lines and said, well, our roof line is lower than the Manger roof line. Sure, it's lower than the Manger roof line. The Manger roof line that's high is a very discrete tower that's part of this historic structure. But the concern of this building is that it's over 200 feet long. And so when you see that roof line, although it's lower, it's a lot wider. And that's a problem, and they have not given us accurate comparative scale diagrams yet. And we've been doing this since January. So we would like to see grading plan, engineered septic plan, and we'd like to see accurate comparative scale plans. Thank you.
Anything further?
I'm not going to give you any of that because you're not entitled to it, and it's not within your jurisdiction. And he's just trying to delay things, okay? So I'm not biting, okay? I'm not going to give you an engineered septic plan. I'm not going to give you an engineered draining plan. The law requires me to keep the water off somebody else's property. These are site plan issues, not your purview. I'm not going to give it to you. I'm telling you that right now. And you've never asked anybody else for it. So you shouldn't ask me for it. It's not a 10-foot high fence. Sometimes you have to know the subculture of what's gone on for 30 years between the building department and the zoning board of appeals. When Orris Bliss sold his property to the east, or rather the west of his house, to Lifton and Green, the then owners of the property to the west of that, John and Lauren Veronis, made the same argument before the zoning board of appeals because there were terraced retaining walls and fences and hedges on top of them permitted by Mr. Foster because this was less than 4 feet. I'm sorry. This was terraced with hedging. So this was 4 feet, this was 4 feet, this was 4 feet. The same argument was made at the zoning board of appeals that this violated the law. The same argument was made by Veronis. The zoning board of appeals rejected it. So I look at these plans. People ask me questions before we develop them. To a certain degree, being a local Southampton practitioner, I have an advantage over Mr. Bregman because he may not be aware of these sort of decisions. But no. That's the law.
All right, board members, a lot of information has been given today. Let's try to dissect some of the things that were said to the opposition. One of which I'm the historic architect who just spoke about
Michael
Goldblum. I want to first thank you for your presentation because one of the things you said that I think that we've mimicked time and time again is not necessarily square footage and giving actual size, but the volume that it relates on property. You didn't make any arguments as to trying to diminish the actual footprint, but to displace it in a manner that's more respectful and that has a better impact or more visual impact to the property and more in keeping with the overall community. So I thank you for doing so, and I think that was a very accurate at least comment and presentation as it relates to our review and our responsibility. For this particular application, I'm going to see to our board members, do they feel that it was accurate in the description and depiction of where this application should start leading towards, meaning which is within our purview, speaking of architecture, speaking of design, speaking about how the overall volume affects visually on site. These are areas that we're not going to talk about reducing the house, but how displacing or replacing or relocating a volume in different locations and still have the overall volume that the applicant's looking for, just looking a little different. Is that something that this application or direction this application needs to do more of? Do you feel that the wall of appearance that the opposition is discussing is something that is not in keeping, or something overall that maybe the applicant should readdress and look at, and maybe look at a new design that is more in keeping and more relevant to not only this particular site, but also the importance of the community and neighborhood? And I'll start first with Brian, the architect.
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend Tim for listening, because I think you did a great job listening to the neighbors and listening to us and redesigning the house. I think it's in a direction now that it's the best you can do for this site, seriously. In terms of the roof line and things like that, I think the way that you've controlled the mass of this is, it feels to me like it's a rambling old house set in a field, and I like that feeling with it. In terms of the courtyard and stretching, I'm not sure how, if you made the house or the courtyard and the house more confined, you could do that without increasing the mass. It's almost like that's where we were, and you've sort of pulled it apart to reduce the mass. And I think that that's very commendable. The issue with the wall, I would like to go see it. I'm not sure how that is affecting things. If you're actually building this wall for septic, you have to do that. There's no question about it. But if the entire site is being filled to create a grade, then you are changing it all. And I would have a problem with that. But I think in terms of the architecture in the house, I think it's a really nice design.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jeff? So,
yeah, design-wise, it's definitely a step in the right direction, and I do appreciate the work you've done in that regard. As Ed Hollander pointed out, this may be a more accurate representation, and while it alleviates the concern about the roof line, as I alluded to, it illustrates the issue of the very long facade facing Gin Lane. And Mr. Goldblum did present an alternative, which I'd like the applicant to consider, because I see this as a massive structure of incompatible scale to the visage as one comes around Lake Agawam. I think there have been alternatives. And I'd like the applicant to examine that. You can choose to or not, but that's something I would look for. I think there are opportunities to make this less massive to the eye in terms of its overall scale as one rounds the corner and looks across.
Now, without annoying the name,
Steve?
I want to thank you, too, for all the work that you've done. I think that the architecture of the house is much improved. I particularly like this handout that you gave us, the renderings on 7, the picture. I think that I really get a sense of what it would be like when you drove in and saw the architecture. I have some other I'm concerned about the wall. I don't really understand the wall. I want to go see it and find out what it is and talk to the building inspector about it. But I think in terms of doing what you could do with that lot and the changes that you were prepared to make to the actual architecture of the house, I'm good with that.
Thank you.
Susan?
Well, I need a little more time to think about it. I do think that I still am concerned about how the architecture that you have presented actually relates to the area specifically where, not England, not English houses in East Hampton, none of that, but to the actual Fairleigh Beach Colony situation. And I would like to hear more about that, perhaps from you, because I think, and I also have the 200-foot span of the ridgeline does, I do have concerns. I feel it's an unfortunate lot, and it's a terrible problem. I feel for you. But I do think that Fairleigh and Mocomanto and Lake Agawam and all those Betts houses are the jewels in the crown of Southampton, and we have to be exceptionally careful about what goes next to it.
You know, I think something that's very telling is it the Ayers, the new Robert Stern house? I mean, look at the footprint of that. It's large, just as large, or if not larger, than what we're proposing. And that house is beautiful. Beautiful. And it's sited well, it sits well, and if that can be an indication of how developing the site could go, I think that's a real positive. To me, I wish this site was never subdivided. I mean, I think that's what we all wish.
That's what
And there's going to be a big house built here, so let's make it the best it can be.
Well, don't forget that Ayers.
Right, and there's an empty lot there.
I think we should get some bennies for that. Ayers and August and Schleifer, preserve that lot.
Right.
That doesn't solve the problem of Fairleigh.
Excuse me.
Fairleigh, by the way, Fairleigh, if you took Fairleigh now, Fairleigh is wildly out of, these are pre-existing non-conforming lots. They're no, this is important. This is really important. Fairleigh are pre-existing non-conforming lots. They're 1 acre lots. I looked at the Fairleigh subdivision. If you subdivided Fairleigh under the current zoning, you'd have 4 homes in there. 4 homes.
Mr.
So you can't
Bennett,
say that.
In 1888, that's just not applicable.
It's totally applicable. You're apples and oranges. This isn't in the Fairleigh subdivision.
It isn't.
Don't fight, please. Can't take it.
We're making some headway. You know?
I think if we look at this application from its genesis, where we had a more collegiate look, like a college or commercial feel, to the Georgian Revival, to where we are now, it shows the evolution of an application where there's community involvement, that there's applicants who are somewhat resistant, but still are willing to make certain changes and adjustments to adhere and try to comply with the community overall. I think that the house now is constructed is softer, a lot more softer than it ever has been. That this step down is more compliant with what our code requests, and that, especially specifically if this was a home that over time was expanded. It demonstrates that evolution, and I appreciate that. This is one of those situations where I think that at some point this board, and I know we've talked about it individually, one-on-one, and I know it's been an issue overall with the village where people speak about size in general, and more prohibitions on creation of laws or legislations to do so and make it more effective for us to do our job, and more importantly for the community to feel that they're not being built out of their community. We're not there yet, but what we're here is what's presented before us, and the review that's been given, the process, the time that's been given, the changes and the adjustments. I think they're now more in keeping. There's still some outstanding information with regards to the retaining wall. I think there should be clarification just so that we have a completion of this application, and that any open questions or open items are resolved, and there's no other questions about septic, retaining walls, height, screening, or anything else. Let's get it clarified. Let's understand where we are. backfill. If more fill is being brought into the site, let's just get it resolved so that there's no open-ended items, and we can move forward on this application overall. Our historic consultant, do you have anything further to add or any information that you feel that should be addressed?
I think we've covered it.
We've covered a lot. Is there anything from the public that they want to discuss more, anything further that they want to, any comments that they wish to make, is there anything of the applicant that they want to address? So what I think this board is saying right now is that it's going to request an adjournment to get further clarification from the building inspector as it relates to the retaining wall and the septic. We asked that the applicant also provide some detail. We're asking just to clarify this, so that there's clarification as it relates to
the question. I can't tell you. I can tell you that there is a Suffolk County Department of Health Services Bureau of Wastewater Management permit for the original iteration of this house. That will shift back because we have very magnanimously shifted the house back 80 feet. But it will conceptually, pretty much structurally as well, stay the same because there's a certain number of bedrooms, and certain distance requirements. You can see that. I don't know if it's in the file. We'll file it. So we'll file that.
That would be helpful.
Okay, so
that would be helpful. So you're getting the additional information from the health department we're looking for. So that this file.
I'm happy to see you can see the retaining wall.
Let's just say that you'll file it. That's it. So
as it relates to the wall, call my office. I'll take you there.
So
not three of you together, but I'll take you.
Any other questions, any issues, anything that's outstanding, or we're all in order?
To some extent, the wall, which I brought up, had as much to do with the integrity of the board and what a person can do with or without the filing for certificate of authority. And if there has been an issue where an action has been taken that was either inappropriate or done unilaterally, then we'll address that. So that's
the building inspector.
Right, exactly. I will do that. I would also like the applicant to recognize the concerns expressed by Brian. I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but that the direction is positive. But I thought I heard you saying that we could still go a little bit further.
I didn't.
In terms of.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't hear that.
No, I didn't want to put words. So I didn't want to. That's why I put it. I didn't want to put words in his mouth. But from my standpoint, again, I made the point that I am concerned with the visage of a very long view, and so that's an issue that I would ask you to address, and I think some alternatives have been presented.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that.
Then
is there anything further
we'll
from the public?
time.
Yeah, but you have to move forward. It's not going to be part of the record.
We started, Jeff Bragman for the Neighbors in Opposition, we started out with a discussion about the inadequacy of the comparative scale drawings that the applicant brought in today. Can we get properly scaled drawings that don't cover everything up with trees, that show us the true dimensions of the proposed building compared to what's there? That's what we'd like to see. I thought that's what the board asked in the beginning, and I just don't want to see it forgotten.
That was before Rick Stock presented his. We'll take it.
I understand. Hold on. So the opposition is asking for a unscreened version of the elevation. The opposition presented detailed photos based on his. Please let me finish, please. Based on his calculations demonstrating what those impacts are. Right. Do you feel that that's adequate to fulfill the file?
I don't think we're going to get anything better than this. Okay.
Christine?
You're just going to get another version of this, right?
We produced a document that we gave to you that shows a dramatic difference between the comparison.
But what they're saying is that they're accepting your information.
Ones. We like it.
Oh, you're accepting ours?
Yes, we like it. We like it. We think it's accurate. Yeah.
Okay.
They're taking this.
Anything further?
Well, there was another one. Can I see?
There's a few of them.
There are a few of them.
Don't snatch the feet from.
Okay, please.
Can I just?
They're all in this report.
They're all in the report.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. Is that Rick? Is that correct?
This one, right?
Yeah, it's just a different angle.
They might accept that, but there are other.
It's not being picked up on record if you're making comment, please. What we're saying is that your information The applicant is saying they accept it as being being accurate, and it's a part of the file now, and this board is reviewing your information as the visual impact that is being requested by the
I'm happy to have their trust in those drawings, but there are only 2 represented there of many drawings that they also represented, and I'd like to see what they would really look like in a rendition.
You're not going to get them.
All right, stop the response. Please stop. Please stop.
This is brutal.
Okay, anything further? Yes.
Hi, just kidding. I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Brady's comment about couldn't get better. We did some studies just informally looking at how one would go about this without modifying the program, modifying a single square inch of anything functional or otherwise. And as you can see from the design, one of the most noticeable things that was mentioned was there's a little connector that connects the garage. It has no program in it. It's just a colonnade. It's about 20 feet long, and it goes to the extent of the length that people were talking about. There are a number of other things that we had talked about. It's not our job to design the house for them, but I think that there are ways, very easy ways, for this house to get a little more condensed, a little more solid, without modifying the floor area, without changing an iota of program, that would address some of the concerns that the board members had, that would keep the design virtually identical, but that would significantly reduce its impact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, I don't have to build the house that my neighbor wants. I have to build a house that is reasonably in compliance with the law and this board's reasonable enforcement of the law. I don't have to build the house. You can't. I don't have to build the house that my neighbor wants me to build. And I think that the board, thankfully, has appreciated all this. The connector is what?
The connector's 15 feet tall.
The
15 feet tall.
connector's not going to impact any
Thank you.
view. We get that. We get that. Yeah.
Shorter than the hedge.
Right.
I think the question about the connectors, and excuse me if I'm wrong and you can correct me, has to do with the accuracy of what you're presenting. And that's what the argument has always been, to the accuracy of the information being received so we can review it. And we're looking at it. Someone told me a long time ago, if one thing's a mistake, everything becomes questionable. So their issue and their concern was, if you're giving inaccurate information that you can't support or substantiate, it puts question to validity behind everything else. We're saying, based on information now that's been given both by the applicant and, please.
I didn't say
okay, I know you. By the applicant and by opposition, reviewing it all and saying we have enough information, but there's some additional information, which is the legalities behind the retaining wall, that has to be clarified so that we have a complete application.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything further? Are we complete? Is there?
Yes, after 2 hours, we are.
Thank you. Counsel, anything legally that we have to be concerned with? Very well. At this point, we'll adjourn, pending the review by the building department, to be heard at our next meeting.
Thank you for your time.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're going to request that adjournment, correct? Yes.
You twist my arm all the time.
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant of 24 and 28 Gin Lane request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Here's my favorite
Thank you.
Next application, please.
Next application, there's a letter in the file requesting an adjournment till August 28th.
Okay. Was that an open adjournment, or is this an open adjournment, first time being adjourned?
I think it's the second.
It's the second, but they did present last meeting.
All right, so motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn. Excuse me, we have chatter. We can't hear the process, and it's getting picked up on our recordings. If you could please.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant Rain and Mulderry on post-crossing request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Next application is Yanis Zumas, 10 Captains.
Good evening, members of the board. Brian DeSessa for the applicant. we filed the amended landscape plan and plans that indicated the chimney and foundation were to be brick. So,
Thank you.
that's all I have. So,
Wow, that's it?
that's it. Just
All I needed to do.
The open
That's all
items
we
have to
need to
do with the material, making sure
Correct.
that, I think we had deep discussion over what was, what you were presenting, what you were proposing. At this time, it's just clarification and revised plans. The plans that you're presenting here today reflect the changes and reflect the materials accuracy that are being proposed, correct?
They do.
And that was the foundation in the chimney.
It was.
Board members, any questions?
No.
Any public comment on the application? Okay. Property is located in the historic district and therefore requires written decision. At this time, we'll close the application for written decision by council. Any questions?
I make a motion that we close the application of Ionis and Zumas on Captain's Neck Lane for written decision by our council.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Next application is 328 Gin Lane.
Brian DeSessa, attorney for the applicant. Again. So we had some additional submissions from the last time we were here and spoke to the board. That's not the house we're looking to put up, but
Hope not.
just to clarify that.
It's a beautiful house.
Well, that was the inspiration.
That was the original house to the carriage house that still exists at 328 Gin Lane. This was the house that was there that is no longer there, so they were in companion. So we were here last time for the south side of the house, second floor, master bedroom, in discussing the windows. I have Jordan from Robert Stillman Architecture as well, so I heard the board's comments last time, went back and talked to the applicant, and talked to the designers. We reviewed history on the house as to how they related together and how windows...
So you understand, you're not making any changes from your original, you're actually still requesting the changing of the windows there that...
We have additional window options based on what we heard from the board last time.
Okay.
And the inspiration of those was this house, from what we heard from the board. So we had, what we had proposed, and we came back with 4 additional options based on inspiration from how these windows, when the original structures were designed, as alternatives to discuss with the board. So if I could, the options 1, 2, and 3 are what we're here to discuss with the board. We've eliminated the other option that you saw last time, which was 5 windows. So what we did, and in looking at the handout that the board has, they're labeled in the bottom right corner. Option 1, we will discuss. Option 2, and option 3. Option 1 and 2, if we can start with those, most accurately relate back to how windows were set up and established, or how they could have been based on the picture that is presented. The goal here is to provide some views of the ocean. That room that we're discussing is the master bedroom, and it faces south toward the ocean. This is currently what exists in the area we're discussing. That's an exterior photo, and I know the board doesn't... the house is being restored, as the board may have been down there to look at, through great care and a labor of love. The structure is remaining the same. The landscaping is being redone. They're bringing it back to life. But in doing that, I brought this because I think it gives a good perspective as well. This is an interior photo of the south-facing wall. So that's the bedroom. So that's the room that faces the ocean. So the goal here is to obtain some more light and view of that ocean. And to doing that, Robert Stillman's office went back, reviewed when this house was built, and you can see in this corner here, which is the upper right corner of that historic house, that's the cover page, as well as across that second story, how windows and I'll call them window packages or programming, would or could have been set up at that time, where you have the 2 close windows of space, and, 2 close windows, or a bank of 3 windows. So in generating options 1 and options 2, they would most closely relate to that. Again, this is a south-facing wall toward the ocean, so we're here to discuss that with the board.
In the spirit of how important the historic district is, I don't think we ever like multiple choice applications.
Sure.
It just sometimes it kind of takes away.
No, I understand. I just, for the purposes of here.
I get you're trying to expedite the process. It's just that what do you stand for if you don't just present what you're standing for? And it's kind of I always have issue with someone coming in and giving multiple choices, and then we sit here and we design your home based on the block form. We'll take a piece of this and a piece of that.
Understand. I would say the goal, what we're here for, is to open up the view for light and air, and view toward the ocean on the south side.
We know why.
So to that extent, I mean, so I would say that's the purpose of the application. And in terms of the options, it's for feedback from the board.
What is your preferential option?
That's what I'm getting at.
The preferential option is option 1.
I'm sorry?
Option 1.
Okay, so that's, say that that's your presentation.
That is our preferential option.
Looking at the...
So the problem is, philosophically, your architectural consultant doesn't get to design this building new. It already exists.
It's there.
So it's not about architectural design, it's about archaeology. In other words, it's an assessment of what's there, not what we would prefer it to have been had we been there in 1910 and got to design it the way we wanted it. That's a conceptual problem. So I would say introducing 4 windows where there are currently 2 is arguably to redesign that facade.
Okay.
And we don't have that option. The option is to preserve the building, not to redesign it, so that we have a better view. This was an accessory building. Obviously, the main house had spectacular views of the ocean because that's where we lived, in the main house. We didn't live in the apartment above the garage.
Correct.
Where we were supposed to be hard at work paying attention to the cars that we're servicing and not looking at the ocean. So I would say that, on the other hand, this board, will extend an opportunity of converting a window to a door and maybe introducing a window here or there. These are relatively minimal changes. So I would say that introducing an additional window to that wall would be a minimal impact, far less than redesigning it.
That's where I was.
So I think that's where we were at the last point.
Plus, I mean,
move my position to option 3.
I didn't say that, but I'm just saying.
I am saying that, not based on you, but I am saying that
that
the
is
board.
more appropriate.
are we changing these to, these are drawn as casements? Are they going to be double hungs, or are they going to be 6/6?
No, they're going to stay clear. Right now, they're aluminum in the window. So we had been here previously. They had already been removed, so they're aluminum windows.
Yeah.
So the sorry, I'm getting some feedback. The application was to replace the existing aluminum windows with, not change the light, just the not the opening, just the material on the windows. And they're going to go back to wood, subject to the board's approval on that. Correct.
Ryan, anything further?
No, I think that's the best solution. It looks like it still could have shutters on it, because it looks like the main house had shutters, so it's appropriate in that sense. And that would be my option. And the 2 windows that are there look like they're too far apart anyway.
They are.
I think this helps.
Christine, comments?
I agree.
I hate the idea of changing it, but I actually think option 3 is okay with me.
Jeff?
Yeah, it lends in very well. If you were to look at the option 3, that is, because if you were to look at that picture, which I went by a few times this past weekend, got a lot of exercise, that there are, I guess, maybe 12-inch sections or whatever. So a center window in there, I think, would preserve the dividing sections and would be compatible.
And the other part of the application was not to change anything, but just to replace the existing windows around the house with the same size as wood. Yep. So that is also, but those all remaining the same.
Notwithstanding the process that we spoke of before, it's also listening. These are things that were mentioned at the last meeting, and trying to. So that's the reason why you came up with an option 3, because of the discussion and the input that this board and our historic consultant put in. So it's just understanding that this board gives recommendations, kind of disingenuous to come back now and say, I want to put 5 windows up and then give you options A, B, and C. Notwithstanding.
5 was the original, so we.
I get you, I understand. But now we're at 3. Number 3 seems to be the consensus of the board. We just ask that in further applications that you kind of adhere to some of the direction the board was given.
Understood.
Any public comment on the application? Anything further of the board?
Nope.
Application is located in the historic district and therefore requires written decision. So at our next meeting, council will prepare that written decision. Any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Excellent.
Have a good evening.
Motion to close for written decision by council?
I make a motion that we close this application for written decision by our council.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next application is closed for written decision by council. Council?
File contains a decision based upon the consensus of the board approving the application as submitted.
Motion to approve written decision by council for 309 South Main Street.
I'm a
Make a motion that
Understood.
I make a motion that we approve the written decision by council for 309.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
You're recused.
Oh, sorry. I did say that, please.
It's all right.
Get me slap happy.
The next application is a letter in the file to request an adjournment. Was there a date?
There is not a date.
Okay. Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until our next meeting.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant's request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, closed for written decision by council.
The file contains a decision approving the application based upon the consensus of the board. An affirmative vote on the motion will be to approve the application as submitted.
Motion to approve application for 72 Main Street.
I make a motion that we approve the
Written decision by
written
council.
decision by council for 72 Main Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Next application is Domino LLC. You have small sets?
Good evening, Melissa Dedovich, Peconic Environmental Associates. I'm here on behalf of Domino LLC with the project architect Douglas Wright. This application also involves the demolition of the existing house located at 6 Fairleigh. If you look at the pictures, our understanding is it really has no historic consequence. The house is in pretty bad condition right now, and there's a shed in the back also. These pictures are in the file, and the existing swimming pool. So what we'd like to do...
Just to set up content, council, is this a contributing structure or not?
I want to see a detail of it. Fairleigh, of course, is in the historic district, and there are several houses on it. Several have been altered considerably, but...
You're going to be scared when you see this one.
Can't scare me.
Oh, I don't know. Look at the shed.
Okay, I like the shed.
You like the shed? Good shed.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Exciting.
yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yes, thank you.
And here I have Douglas Wright, the architect. If you just also want to look at the survey. What we're proposing is actually replace with a two-story house with a detached garage, a detached pool house with attached pergola, and also we have a landscape plan in the file. And I'll let Mr. Wright.
Okay. So in keeping with the fairly historic district, the hedges remain all the way around, and it would remain a private lot from the street. You'd have
this is Fairleigh Road along here, so north, south, east, west. We'd have the driveway entrance gate here, and then a gate, a pedestrian gate here, which is centered on this large gable, which has the stair there. In keeping with the massing of other structures on Fairleigh, I would call it like a Queen Anne shingle-style house with many decorative elements such as brackets, gables, columns. It has the decorative railings. It would be a natural cedar shingle, both roof and the walls with a red brick terrace and brick and bluestone terrace, brick chimneys, all white painted trim. It would be the main house here, a covered connector breezeway to the garage, and then the pool house would be up. Let me show you. So this is the view from the Fairleigh Road. This would then be the elevation to the backyard with the garage in the background, and then the breezeway shown here. I was mentioning like decorative railings, columns, whitewood trim, brackets, a small balcony looking towards the ocean here. So backyard, and then a glimpse of the pool over here. And the pool house itself would be something like this. A simple shingle structure, lead-coated copper roof with the detached pergola here, and of course the pool, and then the hedge surrounding the site. So very little would be visible from the road.
I do want to clarify, actually, we do not, this application does not include the driveway gates at this time. Okay. We're just here right now from the house, and the pool house and the garage.
I'm so glad you did that, because when I saw this, I was like, wow. So I appreciate the depth. Yeah, I appreciate the depth. I appreciate the three-dimensional view. It gives a little bit more texture to the application. Ryan, do you have any comments?
I think it's great. I think, you know, it's a shingle-style house, but it has a lot of great whimsy. The details, I think, are like, I love the little back entrance there with the pediment and, you know, the metal roof that's scalloped. I mean, there's some great detailing in it. I think it's great.
Christine?
I'm still studying it.
Okay. Susan?
There's a second-story deck, is that correct? On the south side of the house?
Correct.
How far away is it from the neighbor? They're tight. Fairleigh is tight.
It's about 45.
No, that's the side.
That's the south side of it.
Oh, south side, sorry. It's 72 feet to the proposed porch, so, and then this is above that, so I'd say about 75 feet.
That is a concern even.
We also, if you do look at the landscape plan though too, it also has the hedges here and the trees.
And trees.
Yeah, in the winter, how's that working? How high up is that deck?
It would just be at 12 feet. 12 feet. It'd be right off the second floor, so let's see. Yeah, that's a door. That's the door from the master bedroom, and then this deck is off.
That's not even the one I'm on the end here.
Oh, this one?
Yes.
That is the one I was talking about.
So, I'm sorry, you were right.
Okay.
So that one is 50 feet from the lot line. So that would be, yeah, it's a narrow porch. It's really just a, it's approximately 6 feet deep. It's really just a lookout towards the ocean, right off the master bedroom.
Any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, the privacy is an issue, and again, I don't know if the neighbors to the south, if that's an issue for them. I'll have to defer a bit to Brian, but it just seemed to me, and maybe it's just my eye, and maybe it's more whimsy than it's symmetry. The deck to the south side, which is on
this one.
on Melissa's right, Does that seem to jut out to you at all? Is
Yeah, but it's like an old sleeping porch.
Is it an add-on that's...
It would be a sleeping porch in historic terms. You know.
We've done a couple of these actually in the neighborhood. On Wine
Yeah,
I think because of the brackets, it looks great.
Yeah, maybe optically it looks larger than it is.
The elevation shows pretty well.
So it extends out, what, like a couple of feet?
5 feet. It's just a place to stand and stand at the rail.
It's not even 5 feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's to show the...
No. And the height when you stand up there, so that's, what's up?
It's 12 standard second floor height, so
it's
probably
14 feet?
12, 14 feet, yeah.
So a 6-foot person would be at eye
20
level?
feet, 18, 20 feet.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if there are any issues with the neighbors.
I will note this is also the X zone, so this doesn't have to be elevated. Actually, the reason why the house is sited where it is we're just getting, so we keep the house in the X zone.
So it's
This would be, so it's down,
to
so it's at elevation, whereas if we had it like just a foot over here, we would have had to raise grade or bring up the house higher. So we deliberately sited the house to keep it in an X zone.
And the house isn't that high, right?
No, the house meets with, but the...
33.
It would have been in an AE 12 zone, which means it would have been a first floor of 14.
So is there any hedging or landscaping to provide privacy to the neighbor to the south?
Actually,
There's hedging, yeah.
All around it.
There's hedging all around, and at the point you're speaking about, there's a garden off the library there, which has a lot of trees.
this is right now when you come in, you can't even see it, and you have to come into the property. The hedges are so large, so they're trying to maintain as much of the existing hedges. And there's
Is that the house to the south?
That's the house to the south.
Because it's a very high house as well.
I have to buy it again.
It's 8.
I think the back is busy.
Okay. You guys, any other question?
No.
I have no question about the design. I think, as stated before, I appreciate the three-dimensional plan, which gives a lot a better review. I've always been a supporter of that. I wish that would be a part of every application, especially one of substance. Landscape plan is not as detailed as I may want. It's not giving any specific detail on what's being added, what's being removed, height. But I don't think, based on the design of the house, the insignificance of I believe, of some of the privacy concerns or issues, I don't have any concerns about the detail of the overall landscape plan as of now. If there is any, and not that the community or neighborhood dictates our application or process, but if a neighbor says something about privacy, then that becomes something we would more address and to figure out in more detail. But as of right now, I have no issue with the design. I have no issue with the privacy concerns or issues. And we'll go to public comment to see where we stand.
What is the material of that chimney there?
Red brick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's just the watercolor nature of the rendering.
I see it on the plan here.
Is there any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
I'm Pam Michaelchuk. Hi. And I'm the neighbor directly to the south. And my only question is really what you just mentioned, which is I'd like a little bit more detail on the landscape plan, just as it pertains to privacy. I think otherwise we're...
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. I mean, those are concerns that we've asked and addressed in past. It's something that we will always be concerned about, especially when there's a second-story deck involved. The amount of second-story decks that you're requesting and you're adding, above I think there are 3 bedrooms that are being impacted. It's a lot of public area that is going to be reviewed, and a line of sight to a neighbor, and issues, concerns could address itself in terms of privacy. So I would like to see details on tree height, what's being removed, what's being subtracted, and how you're going to make sure that any second-story deck, line of sight, there won't be any issues or privacy concerns to the neighbor. In terms of design, we're okay. I think the privacy issue is the only thing that's in question.
Can we ask for a first call?
We can still come back, I'm sorry?
Can we ask for a first call?
A first
If we
call?
could have 5 minutes to talk to the neighbor and see if we maybe could work it out as, I know we're not used to this with this group, but if we could perhaps come to an agreement with it, if this neighbor is satisfied, would this board be willing to entertain it as a neighborly thing, or we can adjourn it and we can come back with a formal plan, if you're willing to talk to us over the...
It's her discretion on when she wants to go out and speak with you about this. I think it's a little irregular to go out to the hallway with the applicant and say...
I know.
Well, excuse me, but I think it's a little irregular to go out in the hallway with the applicant and try to...
You're still going to have to submit a formal plan.
I think you're still going to have to,
Okay, so why don't we'll adjourn it and we'll get your information and we'll work it out and we'll have something submitted within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's a good plan.
Any further public comment? So you're going to prepare that at the next meeting, at this time you're asking for adjournment to prepare
Yes,
that,
please.
correct? Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn until our next meeting.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant Domino LLC on Fairley Road request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our historic applications for this evening. First application, non-historic, please.
99 Edwards Lane? You just need 2, right?
Great.
My name is Siu Liu. I'm the architect for 99 Edwards Lane. We presented this design last time, and the board is concerned with the streetscape, and I was asked to do scaled streetscape of the neighbor on both sides. So here is the Edward Lane. It goes like on the circle here, and this is 99 Edwards, and there's 3 ranch houses next to her, to their house, and then across the street this is the ranch, and then there's 2 bigger houses, and this is the design that I did, and this is this house. This one is this house, this one is this house, and this one is actually this one because, you know, when you turn around to look at the street, this is this one, that's that one, and that's that one. And this house has I have bigger pictures of this. This one is a fairly tall house. It's about 32 feet high, I believe. Oops, I think maybe I filed my plan to you. But anyway, so this is this one. And this house on the Edward side is actually the shorter side of the house because this is the rear yard. The front of the house is actually facing Breeze Lane, and it's a 3-story house, and it's 32 feet high. The house that I designed is, I would like to emphasize that is actually conforming to the new code that is not officially in the code yet in terms of the side yard setback. So, so it may look a little bit tight because Mr. Brady last time has this concern. But I would like to say that, you know, because we are conforming to the new setback, and it's actually 5 feet shorter than the previously approved plan. and we are actually keeping it a foot lower. And we are doing the hip roof, so it's like a less, takes up less volume because of the roof pitch back. And so I think it's more modest looking, and it's 5 foot shorter and 1 foot lower. And I would like to give the board something else to look at. You know, the property is like, it's like a parallelogram, and so even though it's the same size house, it looks more kind of tight on a lot that's not straight. But when it's straight, the same setback, same house, same frontage, this actually leaves more room. So therefore, it kind of forces me to do a little bit angle to have attached garage for them, because they're not young, they don't want detached garage, they really want attached garage. And so basically, let me see what else I wrote. So basically, I think this house is reasonable in the neighborhood compared with the neighbors. And the house itself is 194 square foot under the allowed GFA and 415 square foot under the lot coverage. So we are trying not to overwhelm the site.
Board members, the board requested that the applicant come back with the streetscape to give an idea of the impact of the proposed home to the community and to the neighborhood. There's some concerns about its appearance. I think, Jeff, you had the concerns, correct?
Well, yes, but actually it was Brian who asked for the streetscape.
All right.
No, I think this was very helpful.
Okay.
You know, this is going to be a neighborhood where all these ranches are going to turn into two-story houses, and I think what's being proposed here is a nice mass for a two-story house in that neighborhood. And you can see, I wanted to see it in comparison to the other bigger houses that are there, and it's much more diminutive than those, so I'm happy with it.
Christine?
Yes, I know that street well.
Jeff?
Yeah, the only question I have is, you had mentioned the detached garage. Well, it's not, it's attached. Would there be any consideration for creating a detached garage, and would that lessen the scale as this neighborhood evolves? One, I don't know if it's possible. Two, the applicant might want to do it. But architecturally, Brian, would that lessen the scale?
Always preferred, but that entire neighborhood, you see front garages everywhere. Yeah.
She said they're old and they don't want to.
Well, they're older, if you said young.
They're older. They're older.
You know what that's like.
They're like in, I think,
I'm waiting to hear.
60s. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right.
And they really, we explore.
I'll give them a walk around.
All right, is there any public comment to the application? I didn't see there's, I'm sorry, I didn't get to, Susan, did you have any further?
No, I love the part about the garage.
I guess,
can't help it.
would, and as we go forward, should we be looking for detached garages?
Yes.
And would that be helpful?
Or just not seeing the doors in the front. I
Right.
mean, if it's on the side,
But
that's
it's not a big
fine
enough
too.
lot.
But this lot that doesn't call for that.
Not only that, but because of the configuration setting back the garage, I think you may have side yard setback issues because you wouldn't be able, you would literally be putting the garage behind the house rather than on the side of the house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if it was a square lot, you'd be able to
It
put
would
a
be different.
driveway
Exactly.
back there.
It's kind of hard for this lot. We actually did try.
Okay.
Any public comment on the application? Motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the application at 99 Edwards Lane.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Next application, please.
Next application is Richard and Amy Miller. Downs Path.
Oh.
Matthew LeBrake with Blake McCoy Architecture.
Those reduced plans for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Written, approved, and revised.
And what you propose, what you're filing right now matches everything we have in file? There have been no changes or adjustments?
Correct. And so we are currently have a building permit and currently have ARB approval. It's a material change from wood to a porcelain tile, as well as an addition to the garage. The addition to the garage, you can see in the front house, previously it was slightly more recessed. Here it's pulled out slightly. And then the material change, obviously the wood to this gray porcelain.
That's the change?
Yes.
Board members, any comments?
Yep, I'm fine with it.
Nothing. Any public comment on the application?
I don't think those are stamped.
Yeah, they're all stamped. Two are fine.
Two have to go in the file. That's not.
All right. Motion to approve, please.
I make a motion that we approve the application on Downs Park of Richard and Amy Miller.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
There's one thing for you.
Yeah.
Hello. How's everybody?
Good.
Sure, no, take your time.
Do you have smalls? Yeah, you do.
Smalls, we also have changes to the large. We were brought to our attention there was a discrepancy with the detached garage,
okay,
which we've corrected, and the material we submit tonight will show that correction. It eliminates.
Okay, so can we call the application? You guys start right before me. Okay. Next application,
Next
please.
application is 34 Old Town Crossing.
Hi, Josh Rosenzweig and Tim Ganettis from Austin Patterson Disson Architects. We're representing 34 Old Town Crossing. The board may remember this application in 2015. We came before the board with exactly what you're looking at here, minus a few zoning rules and regulations that have changed as the code had changed itself. So essentially, we're back in front of the board, showing you the same materials, the same aesthetic of the house, the nice Dutch gambrel that we're featuring for 34 Old Town Crossing. And we have a few changes to the overall house based on the new codes. I'll let Tim describe those a little bit real fast.
So are you before ZBA now?
No, the code, the general code.
General code
Yeah, as we were
change.
waiting for the right time to, exist for us to
permit.
build the house, they changed some of the rules and regulations regarding GFA and pool houses.
Okay.
So essentially, this application no longer has a pool house before you. So I'm going to let Tim just go through.
So
a
it
little bit.
requires no variances at this time?
No variances. no.
We redrew the plans to eliminate the need for variance because it was brought to our attention that plumbing was not allowed in the detached garage in order to benefit from the 5-foot reduced side setback. So we eliminated the plumbing from the garage. I would like to present.
Okay, because I was the one who questioned, I had a problem. I know.
Yes, no, we've taken care of that. Yes.
You did that between, because I was.
Oh, yeah, we're fast. We do it real fast. We have everything here for you. We can
What you're
pass that out.
presenting is different from what we have in file?
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Well,
Okay, so
In regards to the detached garage. The detached garage that you have in your plans
So you
currently.
took out the shower and the
We took out
bathroom?
the shower. It's gone. That's it.
That's it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. We just thought we'd pass it around if it's okay with you.
I mean, it was an issue with the building department this morning, and Chris took it upon himself to call them.
Yes.
To make it from a pool house to a garage.
Yes, that's right. It was a garage with a half bath inside. We took it out. It's gone. And it's interesting because the code allows for that to happen as long as it's 10 feet from the property line. But because our garage needs to maintain a 5-foot proximity to the property line, given all of the zoning board changes in the last year, we just felt the need to get rid of it.
It's a shame, it was a nice feature for the house.
Yes, well, that's okay. You know, I think in the long run, if you examine where we were in 2015, I'd like to just read a little bit of some of the changes that took place from the 2015 application to where we are today. Essentially, that's fine.
I don't think that's necessary.
That's fine.
The changes on this application have to do with the removal of the non-conforming
yes,
element.
of course.
Everything else in terms of the aesthetics, the design, and material remain the same. Windows, window placement, everything remains the same.
In fact, the rendering of this house has not changed in terms of its front elevation.
Okay.
That may be helpful to the board. What you're looking at here again is an overall Dutch gambrel style, shingle style home with Danish blend brick veneers that you'll see on the chimney, red cedar shingles, white AZAC trim, barrel post bunds for the posts in the front of the house porch. The overall aesthetic has not changed, again, and if the board has any questions on the overall aesthetic of the house,
No.
more than happy to. Okay.
But you have questions about the design?
That's okay, thank you. There was another issue that was at the building.
We're not putting our hands up. I just want to let you know. I know sometimes you get. I'm sorry. We're sorry. We're not.
Okay, we were together in the building.
Right. There was another issue of concern that was brought up by the building department that I would like to resolve, since this all came up in the morning and the afternoon. One was the pool house, which is now legitimately a garage, and therefore is within its space. The other thing, and this is not me saying it, but Chris at the building department, questioning and the counting of the bedrooms, which I know is a touchy area, but this was emanating from the building department. And on this street in particular, it's a problem because as this and the other houses that have been built alongside of it have raised a growing concern and visible, since I go down the street each weekend, of cars parked on the street. So for me, I mean, architecturally, I don't have an issue with that. I'm concerned about the impact of the parking, the positioning of the driveway on what it might do in terms of street parking.
What's nice about this application from where we were approved by this board in 2015 is that the regulations for the car parking spots got more aggressive within the town. So the application before you is actually more conservative in terms of the overall approach to parking. That's a benefit from where we were in 2015. And we were approved then.
What does that mean?
Yeah, how many bedrooms and how many parking spaces?
How many parking spaces?
We did remove, since the 2015 application that we were in, because the overall GFA, that...
Well, how many bedrooms do
we have? Six bedrooms. We lost a bedroom from the 2015 application.
And how about a gym? You know, we get into this whole... I thought there was a gym downstairs. I know, and that's what I'm saying is, this afternoon, there was an issue as to the counting of the bedrooms.
Well, then let them decide it. And if they reject it, then these people will have to come back.
Right, I'm happy with that. It's just that what I'm saying is I can't comfortably vote until that issue is resolved.
Well, then request that it be adjourned, or have the vote and you'll vote negative, no.
Right.
Well, the issue from today with the building department has been resolved, and if this board feels it okay to weigh their decision on the aesthetic of the house, the building department is still a place that we have to get through in order before we actually build the home. So if this board's satisfied with the overall aesthetic of the house, of course, we have to meet all we have to satisfy all the regulations.
You'll get your permit.
Exactly. So unless the board has any requests for aesthetic evaluation here.
Well, doesn't some of the aesthetic is the driveway, the landscaping, the screening? These are tight houses.
We have a landscape plan that shows all the proper screening
all the
properly.
Places?
Yeah, that's right, everything. Yep. It's in your packets.
Parking changed from the original approval. Has the parking layout changed from the original approval?
Yes, it was reduced by one space.
Reduced, yes.
What I'm asking is that, because I asked what portions to discuss that have changed from the previous application. That's information that I'd like for us to discuss.
Absolutely.
So we can get past it and move on. Let's talk about the layout of the driveway.
The survey clearly has the parking shown.
Okay.
And it has
this is your revised
That's the revised survey eliminating.
It shows your
That's right,
placement of
100%.
parking.
Yes.
And then what are the changes from the prior plan?
The prior plan in 2015 or the one that you reviewed?
From 15 to present, what has changed?
15 to present, one parking space was removed because one bedroom was removed.
That's right.
The answer I need.
Okay.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the public? Any public comment? Please step forward. You could step aside so you can.
Is this another survey from today? Okay.
Your name for the record.
I'm Victoria Kirsten, the next door neighbor to the west. And some years ago, I put in solar at great expense. And I don't know if this house is going to impact my solar.
Oh, solar.
It shouldn't if it meets the sky plane.
You shouldn't
It
do
shouldn't.
that. Okay. So, good. Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Madeline Van John, representing the Southampton Association. I do have a letter I want to submit to the record. One of our concerns was, of course, the bathroom in the garage. That's obviously been taken care of, but I didn't have time to change my letter while I was sitting here, so if I can just submit that for the record. And regarding the garage, another question I had was it does say in the code that no accessory buildings are supposed to have a cellar, and I did see a cellar on the plan, so I'm not sure if I should just take that to the building inspector.
They allow them now.
They allow them now? Okay.
They have to be a certain height, though. It's like, I think it's 6 feet. It's the maximum it can be. It can be only for storage.
Okay. So the code hasn't changed, but they're just allowing them now? Okay. And then also, we had some additional concerns regarding the number of bedrooms, but my sense is that that should be taken to the building inspector, that the board isn't. So we'll send a copy of the letter to the building inspector.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Anything further from the board? Motion to approve?
I make a motion that we approve the application of 84 Old Town Crossing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
Can I have a copy of the list? Sorry to the confusion.
Make some of these.
Oh, don't worry about it.
If you don't want them.
Yeah. Complete. I'd like.
Yay and nay?
These two?
Nay? Okay, so we have, so just for part of record, sorry, we got to finalize this. There were 3 yays, there were 2 nays. Okay, that's why when I didn't think you got that. So we have Susan and you have Jeff, they're a nay.
Based on the file not being the stuff was, I was there at noon, I didn't get to see. I can't do it.
It doesn't matter.
Excuse me.
What's left are the minutes from July 10th.
We have too much paper up there.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Minutes from July 10th, all board members were present? All right. Board members had the opportunity to review the minutes. Questions, comments, concerns, issues, corrections? Motion to approve the minutes from July 10th, 2017.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from July 10th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And motion to close July 24th, 2017 meeting of the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Preservation.
I make a motion that we close this meeting, July 24th, 2017, with the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Good night.